A 250-pound fat girl suddenly lost weight overnight. All this was just because she took the secret diet pills from my family. My best girlfriend is a fat girl who weighs almost 250 pounds. After being abandoned by a scumbag, she cried every day. I felt sorry for her and took out the secret diet pills from my family. I told her that she could only take 1 pill a day. After she started to lose weight, she became more and more greedy and secretly took 3 pills a day. I advised her that this would cause trouble, but she snatched all my diet pills. She also wanted to ask someone to violate me and threatened me by taking photos. You are as thin as a pole, you must have never experienced the taste of a man. I am not sympathizing with my girlfriend and letting you try happiness. You have to thank me. But what she didn't know was that the secret diet pills in our village can not only lose weight, but also gain weight. She was going to die. It was my birthday, and my college roommates said they wanted to celebrate for me, so I invited everyone to JADE for dinner. I also bought an exquisite cake, cut a piece and handed it to my best friend and ran. Her eyes lit up, but she hesitated when she reached out to take it, and then took her hand back. I can't eat it. I have gained a lot of weight recently. I really envy you. I really gain weight even if I drink cold water. I have never lost weight since I was a child, and I have never succeeded in losing weight. And Ran looked at me and said, Shaolin, I really envy you. You don't gain weight no matter what you eat. It would be great if I had money to buy it to lose weight. And Ran is an only child, and her family runs a company. With the love of her parents, she has never lacked money. In fact, she is not ugly, but she is less than 1.6 meters tall and weighs more than 200 kilograms. No matter how fair and pretty she is, she can't stand being fat and ruining everything. People usually laugh at her behind her back and say she is a little white pig. I took the cake back embarrassedly, scooped a bite with a fork and put it in my mouth. It was very sweet and delicious. I suddenly remembered the reminder my mother called me a few days ago. Lin, you will be 20 years old soon. Don't forget the important things. Have you found the fat girl you want to help? With your small weight, if you can't find a fat girl and get her fat, you will die of thinness. In fact, our village was cursed a long time ago. Everyone in the village has a strong appetite and strong digestion, so there are many fat people. This is not the most terrible thing. This curse will reach its peak at the age of 20. From that day on, everyone in the village will be dominated by appetite and eat desperately until they die. In order for the people in the village to survive, the village chief led people to search all over the country and finally found a solution. An absolutely effective weight loss drug was produced, but the weight loss drug was obtained in a very bloody way. The fat man with a strong appetite needs to eat only one special herb every day for a full month. This is the most terrible torture for the people in our village, and then they have to be locked up and starved to death. Grinding his ashes and adding other herbs to make capsules can become the most effective weight loss drug, but everyone in the family can only eat 1 pill a day so that they can lose weight. Although this method breaks the curse, it brings more terrible consequences. The children in the family will die of thinness after the age of 20. It is cruel to die of obesity, and it is also terrible to die of thinness. In order to solve this side effect, the village studied for a long time and finally found a way. It is to find a fat person who really needs to lose weight outside the village. The fatter the fat person, the better. After one-on-one help, the curse can be broken by successful weight loss. Thinking of my father's desperate eyes when he looked at me with tears before he starved to death, I always feel sad and breathless. No, I must find a fat person to help. Amran really wants to lose weight. She has tried all kinds of weight loss methods, meal replacement powders, and fitness classes. Seeing her desire to be thin, I was moved. But I dare not confirm whether she can abide by the rules. The weight loss pills in my village must not be taken too much. She is my rare good girlfriend. She is also the closest person to me besides my family. I hesitated for a moment and was about to ask her if she wanted to lose weight at all costs. And Ran suddenly smiled sweetly at her phone. Then she quickly started to dress up. And Ran, what's wrong? Why are you suddenly smiling so happily? Xiaolin, my idol has accepted my invitation. I have to go out on a date, so I can't go out to dinner with you. Sorry. And Ran carefully applied makeup on her fair and round face, and spent a long time applying false eyelashes. In the end, she didn't apply them properly, and she threw them on the small table a little irritably. Finally, she stood up shyly and turned around in front of the dormitory mirror for a few times. I realized that she was rarely fully made up and wore a tight CK skirt. Because of her fat body, and Ran has never been single since birth and has never been in a relationship. She has had a crush on someone. But because she is fat, she doesn't even dare to confess. She has always been eager for someone to ignore her figure and fall deeply in love with her interesting soul. I am a little puzzled. I haven't heard that she is going to date anyone recently. I am a little worried about her. And Ran, who are you going out with? Can you tell me what time you will be back and whether you will stay out overnight? Send me a message if there is any situation, and be careful. And Ran was about to open the door to go out, and glanced at me impatiently and said, I may not be back at night, you should have a good birthday, don't worry about me, I am not a child, I have a safety plan. She hurried downstairs. I was a little worried in the afternoon and sent her several messages, but I didn't receive a reply until the evening. It was almost 11 o'clock in the evening. My roommates and I thought that she would not come back tonight. She was crazy about dating. Xiaolin, stop worrying. If she breaks up, it won't be all your fault. Yes, she is an adult, it's normal for her to stay out, maybe she can taste the forbidden fruit for the first time. Ha ha ha, I don't know what kind of person she is. She can stay out with Amran on the first date, this taste is strong enough. Oh? I heard that there is a kind of sexual fetish that likes fat people, and likes to feed the other person fatter and fatter. I listened to my roommates chattering and mocking Amran, and I didn't say anything. I looked at my phone that hadn't replied, and I had no choice but to go to bed first. The next morning, I woke up suddenly, even though I usually sleep in. I quickly took out my phone, but saw that Amran had sent me a WeChat message, which was sent just a few minutes ago. Xiaolin, please come here quickly, I'm so scared. She also sent me a location. I quickly changed my clothes and rushed out. I just ran into the hotel room. I saw Amran staggering back to the bed after opening the door, hugging the quilt and crying with snot and tears all over her face. The makeup that she carefully applied yesterday was all ruined, her clothes were not very neat, and there were a few drops of blood on the quilt and sheets. I patted her shoulder, distressedly. I don't need to guess what happened. Amran, don't be sad. She hugged me and cried loudly, Xiaolin, do you think fat people don't deserve love? Woo woo woo. Before we met in person, he said good morning and good night to me every day, and called me little baby every day. Amran cried and said. But how come after we met in person, he disappeared in the morning when he said he didn't want to see me? He also blocked me. Woo woo woo. Before blocking me, she called me a fat guy and a pig head, saying that no one wanted me. She said that if I wasn't a virgin, she would have beaten me up as soon as we met. Amran cried and said. I hugged her and patted her gently, her body was full of bruises, and I could see that the other party didn't treat her well. Why am I a fat guy? Amran pounded the bed, crying and muttering, like a madman. I grabbed her wrist and asked a question that I hesitated for a long time. Amran, do you really want to lose weight? I can help you. I have a secret diet pill at home, which will definitely work. Amran didn't care about crying after hearing this, and took my hand and said, Xiaolin, are you telling the truth? Are you comforting me, so you lied to me? Are you asking me to control my diet and exercise more before eating to make it useful? No. Just take one pill a day, and you will definitely lose weight. Our whole village is full of fat people, and they are all in my body shape after taking this diet pill. Amran's dull eyes suddenly brightened, she wiped her tears with her arm and said, Xiaolin, give me the diet pills, no matter how much it costs, I will buy them. I helped Amran wash up briefly, and we went back to the dormitory together. I found a small box with several locks in the corner of the closet, and took out the diet pills. Anran was so excited that she wanted to grab it immediately, but I quickly stopped her. I looked back and saw that my roommates were not there at this time, so it was just the two of us. I said, Anran, I won't charge for the diet pills, but there is only one requirement: you must take them according to my instructions. You can only take one pill a day, and never take more. When you take it, your only requirement every day is that you must not eat fatty meat, otherwise the diet pills will be ineffective. You must remember these firmly in your mind, otherwise there will be terrible side effects. Do you understand? She looked at my serious expression, nodded seriously, and said, Shaolin, I remember, I will definitely listen to you. I handed her the diet pills. I will give you a certain amount for a period of time, and when it works, you will abide by the agreement, and I will give you more. Don't worry, you really don't need to diet or exercise. Just take this diet pill, right? Yes, as long as you don't eat fatty meat. You can eat anything and as much as you want. After Anran secretly took the diet pills at night, she ordered several takeouts. Cakes, milk tea, barbecue rice, and grilled cold noodles filled up a small table. My roommates saw that she ate so much and looked weird. They couldn't help but laugh at her. Anran, didn't you just break up? How can you eat this? You are so fat, and you are still eating so much. Aren't you afraid of gaining weight? You should at least do some body management, right? You are so fat. But Anran rolled her eyes and ignored them. Instead, she looked in my direction and blinked, and then continued to watch the drama and eat delicious food. Anran listened to me for a whole week, although she may also be a sequela of the previous weight loss, and now she is a bit overeating. That day she suddenly grabbed me, her eyes shining. Xiaolin, do you know? I lost a full 14 pounds, and I didn't eat less at all. I smiled with relief and patted her shoulder to encourage her. Don't worry, as long as you follow my requirements and take your time, you will definitely get thinner and thinner. No problem, I will definitely listen to you. Anran's weight loss effect became more and more obvious. She changed from her previous depressed mood to a more positive one. And my skinny body, became a little plumper, and my complexion changed from the previous sallow complexion. People who saw me were very surprised to ask me, Xiaolin, have you been secretly taking some supplements recently? Your complexion is so good. I just smiled faintly. Maybe I went to bed early recently. Haha, a month has passed quickly. I took the first batch of weight loss pills for Anran, and she successfully lost a full 50 pounds. She became vain, buying new clothes every day and standing in front of the full-length mirror in the dormitory to admire herself. Xiaolin, am I pretty good-looking? I have been fat since I was a child, my facial features are not three-dimensional, and my figure is also bad. I have never seen me lose weight. Now it seems that I can have a waist. And my nose is actually very straight, and my eyes are not so small. I looked at Anran now, and I have to say that although she is not thin now, she can indeed be seen as a fat beauty. Her eyes are black and big, with double eyelids, a straight nose, and an oval face. Although it is not the popular cone face, the smoothness of her face shape is not bad. In addition, her skin is super white and tender, and she looks like a plump little princess. I praised her and looked at myself in the mirror. In the past, I wanted to make my thin bones protrude, and there was nothing but skin besides bones. My face was sallow and my tongue was thick, and I wished that my arms would break if I twisted them. Although I am very thin now, I look more energetic and blood-filled. At least I don't look like a skeleton anymore. I am very satisfied. Seeing Anran's smug look, I quickly reminded her. Remember to take one pill a day, don't eat more. While saying this, I handed her the 2-month supply I had prepared. You are so long-winded. I have said it dozens of times. It's so annoying. Anran impatiently put away the diet pills and didn't dare to look me in the eye. After Anran lost weight, she also studied hairstyle and makeup. In addition, now there are also good-looking large-size clothes. Now she is dressed up and can be regarded as a plump little beauty. The boys in the class privately discussed, "Hey, the little white pig who weighed more than 200 pounds before, has she lost weight recently? She actually looks pretty. I have discovered it a long time ago. She has lost weight, and lost a lot of weight." Before, her round face squeezed her facial features and she couldn't see them clearly. Now she actually looks pretty. It's true. If she loses a few dozen pounds more, I will chase her to be my girlfriend. Haha, she is rich. If she looks pretty after losing weight, how can you, a toad, take her turn? It seems that Amran's change has won the love of many boys. She is indeed not as clingy to me as before, often goes out, and has new friends of her own. She used to stay in the dormitory, but now she almost never comes back, and even stays out all night. I often need to cover for her. Every night, she will video chat with others and often smile at her phone. I am happy for her as she gets thinner and thinner, but I feel something is wrong. She loses weight too fast. She lost a lot of weight in just 1 week. When she takes diet pills, she now deliberately avoids me and dares not let me see. When I ask her, she makes all kinds of excuses. I can't help but call her before she goes out. "Amran, how much do you weigh now?" She began to feel guilty for a moment, and then immediately shook off my hand. "Why do you care how much I weigh? Keep it secret. And you can sell diet pills to help me lose weight, don't worry about so many trivial matters. At most, I will give you money. You can tell me how much one pill costs." I quickly stared into her eyes and asked, "Are you secretly taking diet pills every day?" She looked away, so I quickly pulled her to stand on the scale. Only 120 pounds. She must have secretly increased the dosage. "I have told you to take 1 pill a day, why didn't you listen? Losing weight should be gradual, and you will pay the price if you lose weight too quickly." And Rand didn't care, shook off my hand and continued to go out. "Shaolin, I am so disappointed. You can't understand my eagerness to lose weight. I can't wait to take it slowly, I just want to lose weight quickly, am I wrong? I want someone to chase me, someone likes me, am I wrong? How can you be so selfish? You don't know how many boys will look at me twice when they see me on the street. Some people even asked me to contact WeChat. How wonderful it feels to have so many people chasing me. I am no longer the person I used to be. Are you still my good girlfriend? Can't you see me doing well? I can give you money to buy weight loss pills." As she said that, and Rand directly transferred 10,000 yuan to me on WeChat, then slammed the door and left. I moved the small box that contained your slimming pills. The broken box is not anti-theft at all. I'll use it first. Anyway, you don't need to take it since you are so thin, right? I didn't expect that she could do such a trick of robbing. Looking at her slender back in shorts, I let out a sigh of relief. And Ran is really going to get into trouble. From that day on, and Ran never came back to the dormitory. I sent her a message, and she never replied to me again. But I know she must have increased the dosage. Because the slimming pills are not only those that she took away, but also some capsules for slimming. In fact, the more appropriate name is fattening pills, which are for me to take. Because we are already 20 years old, we are cursed to lose weight until we die of thinness. The weight that Ran loses from taking slimming pills can be compensated by the weight-gaining pills I take. If she takes 1 pill a day as I told her, she can achieve a delicate balance with me. She can lose weight slowly, and I won't die of thinness caused by the curse. But she doesn't listen at all. If you don't take it as required, the effect of the slimming pills will get out of control. The effect of the curse will be transferred to the person who takes the diet pills. It will attract Ran to keep increasing the dosage until she loses weight. Although it won't affect me, I am very worried about Ran. I picked up my phone and prepared to call her to persuade her again. But she rarely took the initiative to call me. Xiaolin, I was not good at it before. I found a very good boyfriend. I want to invite you to have a meal together and thank you for helping me lose weight successfully. When I was about to reach the restaurant where she invited me, I was blocked by 2 hoodlums at the door. Yo, is this the beautiful girl that Anran said she would find for us? That's all. If I were to say, she is not as pretty as Anran. Look at her snow-white chest and voluptuous thighs. Now that I have gained weight, my figure is much more symmetrical, and I can barely be considered to be a little pretty. Where is Anran? She asked me to come. Anran. Don't even think about it. The two people dragged me to the alley next to me with a sly smile, and they also touched me in various ways. Of course, the little bitch was busy serving our big brother. We were also jealous, and Ran gave you to us. I quickly reached into my pocket for my phone, wanting to call the police for help. But the gangster was quick and threw my phone far away and smashed it to pieces. Ouch, we don't need a phone to be happy together. Come on, little sister, let the brothers love you well. They dragged me into the depths of the alley, stripped off my clothes, and the sunlight shone through the dust in the air. Ouch, this skin is quite smooth, worthy of being a college student. Profit, this little girl is still a virgin, and she made a lot of money today. Come on, let me take over. My tears mixed with dust smeared on my face, and it was dirty. At this time I heard the sound of high heels hitting the ground next to me. Da-da-da. I looked up and saw a pair of white and slender legs in my sight, wearing slender high heels. Looking at it online, she had exquisite makeup and flowing curly hair, and she was a real beauty. She smiled at me, full of sweetness. Xiaolin, do you feel happy? I am so considerate of you. I know that you have never had a boyfriend and must be very inferior, so I found two for you. Amran took a step back and moved closer to a man's arms. The man wore loose jeans, dyed flaxen hair, and wore diamond earrings. He looks very handsome, but he doesn't look like a good person. Xiaolin, this is my boyfriend, isn't he handsome? I gave my virginity to him before. Amran smiled shyly and covered her mouth with a giggle. He didn't abandon me at all at that time. He left because he had something urgent to do. You blamed him wrongly, and you accidentally blocked him. This is not after I lost weight. He loves me to death and treats me well every day. I closed my eyes, feeling embarrassed. But I looked at Amran and felt cold in my heart. Why did you lie to me, why? We are obviously the best girlfriends. I clearly helped her lose weight successfully, why do you repay kindness with hatred? Oh, I am thanking you. And we are good sisters. Now I have a man, I have to find a man for you. You don't know that a woman without a man is incomplete. Do you feel happy now, ha ha ha? And Ran pointed at the two hooligans with her slender fingers and said, then, these two are called Lu Quan and Lin Chang, both of them are your husbands, you must remember. And Ran's expression seemed to have done me a great favor, her smile was gentle and lovely, but I felt more and more disgusted, I turned over and vomited. And Ran looked at me and took several steps back in disgust. Xiaolin, stop pretending. If it weren't for you being my best friend, this good thing wouldn't be your turn. You already have such an effective weight loss pill, but you have been hiding it and not giving it to me. Seeing me being fat and bullied by others. You must laugh at me behind my back, this is what you deserve. I have taken all the weight loss pills, I order you to continue to give me them quickly. If you don't listen, I have many ways to make you live a life worse than death. This money is for you, just think of it as buying it from you, we owe each other nothing. After saying that, she threw a stack of money at my half-dressed body. I looked at the cash scattered all over my body, and suddenly laughed at the sky above my head, laughing so hard that I couldn't breathe. Amran, I wanted to save your life, but since you chose the road yourself, let's wait and see what happens next. After all, the better it is now, the more painful it will be when it is broken. Since that day, Amran has never returned to the dormitory. She has changed so much that her roommates can't recognize her when she walks on campus. With exquisite makeup and hot girl clothes, plus Amran's fair skin and three-dimensional facial features, she has now become a school beauty. Oh my God, what happened to the little white pig? How did she become a goddess now? No wonder everyone says she looks good. Fatty people are definitely beauties after losing weight. How did she lose so much weight? Did she go for liposuction? Look at how thin her waist is. She didn't have plastic surgery, did she? She looks different than before. I looked at the extra ingredients for the slimming pills in the family box and gently put them into the capsules. It seems that Anran really didn't listen to the advice at all. She was already so thin, but she was still taking more pills. That night, I received a photo from Anran. Xiaolin, I think I'm almost slim. I gave the remaining slimming pills to your two boyfriends, but for some reason, they didn't lose weight after taking them, but became fatter. What's going on? Reply to me quickly. I chuckled and typed a reply, observe for a while, and come to me if there is anything. I put down my phone indifferently. They will definitely come to me again. After all, people always pay the price for their greed. The slimming pills in our village are not effective for just anyone. Both parties must be willing, otherwise the curse will backfire. The slimming pills have become life-threatening weight-gaining pills, which make people eat more and more until they die of starvation. But Lu Quan and Lin Cheng are so desperate, they must be fulfilled. A few days later, Anran returned to the dormitory and pulled me out mysteriously. Xiaolin, it's so strange, come here. She pulled me to a remote corner where few people go, and then I looked up and saw two spherical objects standing there. It turned out to be two hooligans who were as fat as balls. Xiaolin, why didn't your diet pills work for them? Diet pills can only work for one person, so it's useless for others. Amran's boyfriend pushed me anxiously. What should we do with them? Now they are hungry every day. If they are not given food, they will go crazy. No matter how you persuade them, they even nod off a corner of the table. I don't care. Anyway, since you can help Amran lose weight, you must have a way. Hurry up and make them return to normal. I glanced at him and pretended to be deep, then you may have to go back to the village with me. In our village, every household has a secret diet pill. As long as you can find someone who is willing to give it to them, the problem will be solved. What are you waiting for? Let's go. I touched my chin and frowned deliberately to pretend to be embarrassed. Our village is far away from here, deep in the mountains, and we have to walk a long way. Moreover, the village is relatively xenophobic and unwilling to let outsiders in. Anran grabbed my wrist and said, you see, they are both like this, you must take us, you can't just stand by and watch them die. And your mother called you a few days ago, you should tell her. Your mother sounds good-tempered, and she will definitely welcome us classmates to visit. I reluctantly said, okay, I'll ask. Seeing that I was being manipulated by them, the two balls also said with a sly smile, just be obedient. The brothers will definitely take good care of you. Help the brothers, and you will be prepared to eat delicious food and drink spicy drinks in the future. I resisted the nausea that was surging up and called my mother. Mom, I have a few classmates who want to travel to our village. Didn't I help my best friend lose weight successfully? Now there are two more who want to lose weight. After my mother heard what I said, her laughter came through the microphone. That's great, if fat people want to come to our village to lose weight, they are very welcome. I'll go and tell the village chief, and I guarantee that they will have fun. I hung up the phone with a smile. Lin Cheng looked at me proudly and said, look, my future mother-in-law is still very considerate. Isn't she welcoming us to visit? When I looked at the date, it was just the holiday coming up, so I made an appointment with them to set out for the village as soon as the holiday arrived. Before we set out, my mother called. Everyone in the village had greeted them. It happened that two families were almost unable to hold on. They just needed two super fat people. You must bring them back. My dear daughter, let them eat more these days, the fatter, the better. I agreed repeatedly and reunited with Anran and her group of 4. First, we took a plane to a city near my hometown, and after taking a 2-hour bus, we got off the bus and started walking on the mountain road. The mountain road was rugged, and Anran's delicate feet were all blistered along the way. She pulled me and complained, how far is it? Xiaolin, don't you lie to us? I'm almost exhausted. Lu Quan panted and spitted, saying, you dare to lie to us, ha ha, be careful of your life. We will push you down from this deep mountain forest, and if you die, no one will collect your body. I pretended to be scared and said, how dare I? Look ahead, there is a village in the distance. We staggered into the village. My mother smiled brightly when she saw my plump figure. Oh, my daughter is so beautiful. Your father paid for us and brought such good classmates here. It's great. She turned her head and looked at Anran's slender figure, and smiled from ear to ear. This is the little girl you helped to lose weight, right? She is so beautiful, her little figure is amazing. She looks better when she is thinner, she looks more beautiful when she is thinner. Anran was praised for her beauty, and she said for the first time, thank you, Auntie. She pointed to the two hooligans who had gained weight in the past 2 days, and said arrogantly, Auntie, you see, those two are Shaolin's boyfriends, they are very good to her. I came here this time, because I heard that your village has a secret diet pill that can help lose weight. Hurry up and give it to them. I sneered in my heart while listening to her righteous words. She thought she was a mantis catching a cicada, but she didn't know that she had already entered the oriole's nest. My mother looked at the two people who were so fat that they had difficulty moving, and her eyes rolled and she smiled. These two handsome guys are my daughter's boyfriends? My daughter is really amazing. When you come to the village, just treat it as your own home. Don't be restrained. Losing weight is easy. I have already informed the village. 2 families will provide you with weight loss pills, don't worry. Anran's face fell, and it seemed that she was sulking because she was trying to discredit me. Walking in front, she deliberately muttered loudly, she is so wild, she has 2 boyfriends, and is praised by her own mother. I really don't know if she and her mother are so wild. It seems that the bitch is really shameless. My mother and I heard this, but we didn't care. Now she is still full of viciousness, don't let this mouth be unable to eat later. The 2 families who helped the 2 gangsters this time are girls of the same age as me, and can be regarded as childhood friends. One is called Xiaoya and the other is called Xiaowen. They have never left the village to go to school in their lives. When they graduated from junior high school, they helped their families raise pigs and farm early. So I never had the chance to find the fat guys outside to help break the curse. Xiaoya and Xiaowen were very happy to see me back, and quickly let me in. They served me fruit and gave me a massage. Lin, you are finally back. They looked at the 2 fat guys who came over shyly and smiled happily. Was what you said on the phone before true? You are so awesome. You can find so many fat guys who need help. College students who go out to study are really different. I admire you so much. Looking at their slightly rough faces from the sun, I patted their shoulders distressedly. Lu Quan and Lin Cheng were not polite at all, and looked at the 2 girls directly. Although they were dark, they were young and beautiful, and the 2 gangsters were drooling. I didn't expect it, I didn't expect that there are more strange beauties in your village. Yam frowned, pulled my clothes, and asked quietly, what do they mean by what they said to you? Why do I hear something wrong? Seeing that he was suspicious, I quickly smiled and fooled him. Oh, the little sister has never left the village since she was a child, and her thoughts are simple. She is happy to see outsiders coming. And they have never been to college, so of course they envy us who are in college. As for weight loss, there is a rule in our village that has been passed down for a long time. Every family must enthusiastically help those who need to lose weight. Success is rewarded, and they can be divided into houses and land, so they are so enthusiastic. Flaxhead was skeptical and could only watch Lu Quan and Wang Chang being taken home by the 2 girls. The 2 fat guys were very happy, their steps were brisk, and they followed the 2 girls and talked and laughed all the way. Anran and her boyfriend were arranged to live in my house. When they were about to go back to the room, Flaxhead whispered to Anran, I always feel that this village is not right, it's weird. Otherwise, let's go first tomorrow? Anran said coquettishly, pinched his waist and asked, what's wrong? I finally walked for several hours on the mountain road and came in. I am almost exhausted. Brother, come and rest with me. Can you give me a foot massage? My feet are in so much pain. Yama was so confused that he went to have sex with Anran. I smiled coldly. Now that I'm here, it's not that easy to leave. Oh my god. The next morning, I was awakened by the noise of Amran and Yamato. Amran screamed and slapped my door. Xiaolin, don't sleep. Open the door and help. What happened to my face? I opened the door easily. Amran was a fair and tender little beauty yesterday, but today she looked like a skeleton with pustules on her face. I widened my eyes and exclaimed, Amran, what's wrong with you? Let me see. Amran cried and hit Yamato with her little fist. Woo-woo, husband, what should I do? Yamato pulled her hand away in disgust and took several steps back. He couldn't bear to look at her ugly face. From yesterday's sticky face to now, it has become extremely disgusting. How do I know? Stay away from me. It's so disgusting. What's on your face? I'm scared to death, get out. Get out. Get out. After he said that, he pushed Amran hard and walked out the door. And Ran was stunned. She quickly pulled my hand and begged me devoutly, Good Xiaolin, you are the best to me. Please help me, I don't want to become so ugly. And Xiaolin, why am I so hungry, so hungry? I want to bite you when I see you. I quickly shook off her hand and patted her shoulder with my fingertips to comfort her. Since you are hungry, go eat quickly. You must have eaten too little and had acne due to unbalanced nutrition. Don't worry. My words seemed to comfort the flustered and Ran. She rushed to the dining table and murmured to herself while stuffing food into her mouth, I just ate too little. I have to eat quickly. I will look good after I am full. It was not until dark that the flax head came back, looking absent-minded. And Ran asked him where he went, but he didn't tell her. When he asked anxiously, he pushed and ran to the ground and scolded her for being a shameless ugly freak. You are so ugly that you are not worthy of being my girlfriend. Get out of here. After that, he went into the room and locked the door. And Ran knocked on the door but couldn't get in, so she gave up and sat at the dining table to continue eating, asking my mother to make more delicious food with high calories. She stuffed food into her mouth desperately until the juice was all over her body. She said with tears in her eyes, I will eat more, and I will gain weight if I eat more, and my husband will continue to like me. It's not wrong for him to like beautiful girls, it's all my fault, it's my fault. I watched her shaking my head like crazy, and glanced at the closed door of the flax head. I felt that something must have happened during the day. After all, when he just came back, he still had a familiar fragrance on his body. Before dawn the next day, the flax head packed up all the things, picked up the box and prepared to run away, but Anran, who had been eating all night, saw him and stopped him. Husband, where are you going? Holding a chicken leg, Anran was about to pull the other party with oil in her mouth. Are you going back to school? Take me with you. The flax head gave her a solid kick, and Anran didn't get up for a long time on the ground. Stay away from me, it's disgusting. Maggots grow all over my face, I'll go by myself. You wait here with the two of them, don't follow me. Before he finished speaking, he rushed away with the box, as if someone was chasing him. Not long after, Xiao's parents in the village came after him with hose. Only then did I know that this guy slept with the girl yesterday. This bastard just saw that our Xiao was young and beautiful and didn't understand this kind of thing. He tricked her into doing such a dirty thing, I'll catch up and beat him to death. Xiao's father ran and continued to chase, while Xiao's mother held the shovel and cursed. My mother heard the sound and ran out, and followed the curse. He actually ran wild in our village, he really hates his life. Wait, the curse of the village will make him suffer. He will regret it when he dies of overeating, ugh. And Ran listened on the side and finally realized that something was wrong. Staring with big empty eyes, trembling, she asked, What do you mean? Are you going to hurt us? I warn you, if you hurt my husband, I will never let you go. I will kill you. And Ran threatened with a chicken leg, and Xiao's parents and I looked at her and laughed. She actually wanted to kill us, looking at her body full of bones. I can't even count the firewood. I poked and ran with contempt, and she took 2 steps and fell to the ground. You are like a refugee now, and you still want to save others? Forget it. We set out to Xiaoya's house. As soon as we entered the door, we saw Lu Quan lying on a recliner like an old man. There were delicious food on the small table next to him. But at least he had lost a lot of weight and no longer looked like a ball. It seemed that the diet pills given by Xiaoya's family were effective. Seeing me come in, Lu Quan quickly got up and smiled eagerly. The diet pills in your village are really amazing. I feel that I have lost a circle in just one day. There are so many delicious foods to eat. It's amazing. Is it possible to mass-produce them? My mother quickly persuaded, it's good to lose weight, but this diet pill can only be given to you one-to-one, keep working hard. Let's go to Xiaowen's house to see. Don't go out before you lose weight successfully, otherwise you will rebound. When Lu Quan heard this, he quickly sat back on the chair. He repeatedly promised that he would never step out of the yard. When I saw Lin Cheng, I found that his weight loss effect was even more amazing. He had difficulty walking before, but now he looks like a muscular man. Lin Cheng looked me up and down while holding a cigarette in his mouth. Your diet pills are really effective, but there are too many rules. After taking the pills, you have to eat more. You are almost full to death. I agreed repeatedly, but sneered in my heart. The better the effect of this diet pill, the closer to death. Anran's boyfriend left today. Do you want to go back too? But he refused repeatedly. The holiday is not over yet, I will continue to lose weight to consolidate. And the scenery in your village is pretty good, I will just take it as a relaxation. He glanced at Xiaowen and me while talking, and his lecherous eyes made people uncomfortable. Xiaowen and I signaled, and she nodded to indicate that she would definitely let Lin Cheng stay. Since you want to stay for a few days, Xiaowen can take you around. She likes strong boys like you the most. When I got home and saw Anran's thin and pus-filled face, my mother and I no longer avoided it. It's almost over. They will die of weight loss in 2 days. Don't they want to lose weight? Ha ha ha, they actually dared to bully people in our village, they deserve it. And Ran looked at us in shock, the chicken leg in her mouth fell out, and she pointed at me with trembling fingers. Have you been lying to us all this time? I walked over indifferently, grabbed a pig's trotter and stuffed it into her mouth. Disgusting juice burst out of her face, and I hurried to wash my hands. Sorry, it's too late to know now. Do you think we are helping you lose weight for nothing? Let me tell you, our village is cursed, and we need to find a fat person who can definitely help you lose weight in order to avoid dying of thinness. Of course, the chosen fat person will become a fat blood bag and be consumed until death. And Ran burst into tears and asked me tremblingly, why me? Aren't we best friends? Do you still remember Xiao Tong? She is my sister, the person who is blessed by the god of luck in this village. She is the only child who is not cursed. Our whole village tried our best to give her the best. We provided her with schooling, hoping that she could help us completely solve the curse. But she died before she reached adulthood. Guess how she died? She thought she had saved a bullied girl, and she was just too kind. As a result, the girl not only didn't know how to be grateful, but also gave all her information to the bullies and the gangsters outside. She was tortured to death. And Ran suddenly pushed me away and held her hand tightly, looking crazy. It's not me, you found the wrong person. I didn't do it, it's her own fault, it has nothing to do with me. She deserves it. I see that she is still running away, and her heart is full of hatred. There is not even a trace of regret in her heart. It seems that you are dying now, you deserve it. And Ran stumbled out the door, trying to escape from our village. I'm sure I can run out, and I'll call the police when I run out, and let the police arrest all of you devils. But before she ran a few steps, her eyes were red and she fell to the ground. The pus on her face exploded like fireworks. Oh, I'm so hungry. And Ran can no longer be called a human being, grabbing grass and stones and stuffing them into her mouth. I'm so hungry. She started stuffing soil into her mouth until all the weeds were pulled out, and she ate until her belly was bulging, as if she was pregnant for 10 months, and then she died. The villagers heard the noise and came to watch the fun, and they made envious noises while watching. The Lin family is so lucky, they have the materials to make diet pills again. Isn't it true? We still have to go out of the village to find the right materials. My mother's face was ruddy, and she happily dragged and ran, who was wailing constantly, into the woodshed. This is the best material for diet pills, and it can't be wasted. That's right, this woman killed our hope, and it would be a bargain for her to grind her into ashes. A few days later, I strolled to see Lu Quan and Lin Chong. They were skinny and frantically eating tree bark and grass roots in the yard. I'm so hungry, please give me something to eat. Before long, they also became the ingredients for Xiaoya and Xiaowen's weight loss pills. The two little sisters thanked me with a smile. People in the city are different. The ingredients of these weight loss pills are better than those of other people. Sister Xiaolan is so good to us. I was packing up to go back to school when I received a strange call. Hello, bitch, is there something wrong with your village? Why am I getting fat too? It must be you. I warn you to give me the antidote quickly. I snorted, turned on the hands-free, and threw it aside to continue packing. You bullied the young and ignorant girl in the village. Isn't it right to be punished? Okay, it's you. I tell you, I will take people back now and kill your entire village and burn it down. Hurry up and give me the slimming pills, or I will be the first to kill you. Come on. I counted the days and smiled. Sure enough, he never showed up in the village, but a strange incident was reported in the news. Shocking. A man shouted in the street that he was starving to death, angrily chewed 18 benches, and finally broke the traffic lights and was controlled by the police. Netizens in the comment area watched the fun. Oh my, how many lifetimes has he been hungry? Whose divine beast was released? Okay, this is not a human, it's a round ball. Oh my god, is he going to explode? Exploded. Soon, and Rand's disappearance was reported to the police, but she had not lived in the dormitory for a long time, and she was hanging out with gangsters in society every day. Everyone thought she had eloped. When the police investigated, they found that she had not lived in the dormitory for a long time and her private life was chaotic. When they asked me, I exaggerated it. And Rand seemed to have found a boyfriend, the one with flax hair. Later, she went out every day and didn't come back to the dormitory. She didn't tell me many things. Before the holiday, she seemed to be very anxious. What happened to her? Because we met in the deep mountains, I was not found. In the end, they were classified as missing while traveling. I looked at my sister's photo, and crystal tears dripped on it. Sister, I finally avenged you. I hope you will be happy in your next life. The end. Have you ever seen a live broadcaster who collects things used by the dead? They are called Imu merchants. At this time, the first online fan showed the jade bracelet on his wrist. Do you want a bracelet worn by a dead person? The jade bracelet was red all over, and it seemed to have liquid flowing, as if it was alive. I was shocked. Take off the bracelet quickly, smash it and burn it with fire until it is colorless. If it is 10 minutes later, you will be sucked into a mummy by the jade bracelet. The live broadcast room was instantly flooded with comments. Anchor, you should check the time when you are joking. It's just past midnight, don't talk nonsense and scare people. The jade bracelet sucks blood. This is a bluff. I have heard the rumor for 800 years. Anchor, how can you, a top student who graduated from a 958 university, still believe it? Why would someone bring things used by the dead? Shouldn't these things be burned with the dead? This bracelet is pretty good. The anchor collected the small yellow car and I want to buy it. Damn, you dare to buy things from the dead? Tired of living. Everyone seemed to be indifferent to my reminder, playing and teasing each other. My name is Shenlui, I work as a copywriter in an internet company, and I am also a Imu merchant. I specialize in collecting things used by the dead. If the things of the dead are not properly handled, they will become mean and evil things, and bother the living. I was bored, so I started a live broadcast online. Collecting Sumimu online can also be regarded as completing the task of accumulating merits assigned by my master. As I was talking, the fan showed his face. He was a middle-aged man. He had a long and thin face, deep eye sockets, and dark blue under his eyelids. He looked like he hadn't slept for 3 days. "Anchor, do you want to take this thing?" I stopped holding the Buddhist beads, and my expression was solemn. "I'll say it again, take off the bracelet, smash it and burn it with fire until it is colorless, and you can save your life. Otherwise." Before I finished speaking, he lowered his head and muttered to himself as if no one was around, "This is a family heirloom left by my great-grandfather. It is about 100 years old. My grandfather said that this bracelet can bless my family to prosper for generations and my descendants to be safe. But a year ago, all 108 people in my family died." The cheerful comment area was quiet in an instant, and then the screen was full of question marks. Terrorist incident? Has this live broadcast room started to tell stories? Big brother, don't make a fuss, there are 108 people in the family? Do you think you are the 108 heroes on Liangshanpo? Or do you count the pigs raised at home? I can't stand it anymore. What a damn unfilial descendant. How can you curse the whole family to death, just to sell a bracelet? Everyone, go and report him. The man suddenly looked up and smiled, his face was calm, looking at the camera and asked the anchor, "I will sell this jade bracelet to you for 100,000. I shook my head helplessly. "I can't take it, it has become evil," and recognized its owner. Only the owner can destroy it. When the man heard that I didn't want to buy it, he suddenly lost his calmness just now, and even became a little anxious. "I need money, 50,000 is okay? If not, I will borrow 20,000. I slapped the table and stood up, staring at the camera and yelling, "If you don't do what I say, you will die immediately. What do you need money for?" Damn, I'm scared to death. Anchor, why are you so loud? You scared me too. I just stared at the bracelet for a while, and I felt very uncomfortable. Was this bracelet this color from the beginning? I glanced at the comment area and answered directly, "No." My affirmative tone made the man slightly stunned. The color of the bracelet was light green at first, and after a period of time, a trace of blood red suddenly appeared, like a thin line. Then slowly one line turned into two, and the color was like blood dripping into clear water, a slightly turbid light red. After a little longer, the color of the bracelet became darker, and the things inside flowed like water. Someone asked, "Things? Flowing? What is that?" I looked at the time in the upper right corner of the live broadcast, sighed, moved the Buddhist beads with my fingers, and said softly, "It's people. In other words, it's the family members of this gentleman who died." The 108 people he mentioned should be counted from the time when the jade bracelet appeared in his family. All 108 people died from this blood jade bracelet. Speaking of this, the man's face was gray, his eyes were dull, and his mouth was slightly open, like a zombie. The jade bracelet on his left wrist was emitting a strange light. As long as you squint and look carefully, you can find that the speed of those things flowing is getting faster and faster, and they are extremely excited. Look, why is this man not moving? Is his internet speed too slow and stuck? Damn, something is wrong. Family members, why is the eldest brother's face getting paler and paler? Like a dead person. Is this a live broadcast effect? Anchor, please speak quickly. I quietly watched the man who was dying bit by bit on the opposite side, and my heart was a little complicated. My master has repeatedly reminded me, good words do not persuade the damned, and mercy does not save people. What a pity for this person, what a pity for this bracelet. Although I don't know the man's home address, I still called the police and let the police worry about it. Back to the live broadcast room, they are still discussing whether this person is dead or alive. Is it fake? This makeup looks real. Domestic horror movies should hire this person as a stylist. It doesn't look fake. It's been 10 minutes, and he didn't blink. Is he really dead? Anchor, let him say something quickly. I don't want to chat with the dead late at night. I typed a reply, dead. The live broadcast room exploded instantly, asking me to call the police quickly. I replied again, I reported it. But some people still don't believe it. The anchor is lying again, and he didn't turn into a mummy. It's just that his face is a little pale, so he should die suddenly from staying up late. Don't promote superstition here and mislead others. I don't believe it either, but it's scary. He really doesn't look good. Uncle Joe's spirit in heaven, please protect me. Seeing them go crazy in the comment section, I turned on the microphone again, hush. I wanted to comfort these scared babies, so I lowered my voice and said, you think he looks like a person, but there is actually no blood in his body, it's all dirt. Before I finished speaking, the camera suddenly blurred and a black shadow appeared. He only showed his lower body, and his clothes were tattered. He approached the microphone and smiled, you are right. The knife flashed, and a cut was made on the man's cheek. Gray sticky stuff flowed out of his skin. It really wasn't blood. Damn, it's really not blood? This color looks like that shit. Too scary. Anchor, are you showing us a horror movie? The comment section was screaming with fear. I stared at the man with a deep look and asked, who are you? He laughed again, and suddenly stretched out a slender big hand, with sickly white fingers, which was a bit scary. He tapped the blood jade bracelet lightly with his fingertips, then pressed the two ends with his thumb and index finger and pulled the bracelet out. Most people need to make their hands into chicken claws to take off the bracelet, then pinch the bracelet with the other hand, gently pass through the widest part of the palm, and slowly take it off. But this person didn't want to touch the man's hand, so he used brute force to pull the bracelet out of his wrist. The hand, which was like clay, was torn off. Although the broken hand flashed by, many people saw it. My scalp numbs. Am I seeing it right? The hand is broken, it must be a burglary, killing for money. This is not suicide, it's murder. I'm going to call the police. The anchor should also call the police quickly. You can't get away from the murder in your live broadcast room. The man quickly disappeared from the camera, and he took the blood jade bracelet. Things are a bit bad. I was about to reply to everyone that I had called the police, and the police called back and said that the person was dead, and asked me to cooperate in making a voice record. I told him directly that he could take a statement and provide them with the video. When the fans heard that I was going to the altar, they asked me to live broadcast the whole process. Early the next morning, I drove to the altar. In the detailed questioning, I learned the specific case, which was a bit weird. The police said that there was no trace to prove that anyone entered and left the deceased's home, and the cameras around the community did not record any strange people. That was strange. My fans and I were not wrong. It was the man with the big white hand who took the blood jade bracelet. I took a shower back to the hotel, put on a mask, turned on my phone and started the live broadcast. Everyone had already squatted and rushed into the live broadcast room as soon as possible. Anchor, what did the police ask you? Is the man really dead? I replied, dead. Did you show the live broadcast replay to the police? It's too weird. I replied, I saw it. They were also confused. Are you kidding us? I replied, am I sick? Are you kidding about this kind of thing? The anchor did not lie, I can testify. My friend is from Tanching, and the apartment building next to him, the police and ambulance came. The death was miserable, even more disgusting than what we saw that day. The one upstairs, please tell me more details. I walked to the bed and picked up my travel bag, and took out an old mobile phone from the small bag. I fiddled with it for a while, before returning to the camera. They tagged me in the comments section to see their private messages. I clicked it curiously, and a beautiful blood jade bracelet rushed out of the screen. I was shocked. These hands were obviously a girl's, plump and white, with round and full fingernails, and cute manicures. I noticed that she posted the picture at 8 o'clock this morning. Could she be a college student who could get up at 8 o'clock in the morning? Back in the live broadcast room, everyone was curious whether this jade bracelet was the one from yesterday. I thought it was not such a coincidence, so I didn't care and started the connection today. As soon as I opened it, I connected to a white female college student named Meng Meng. As soon as the beauty appeared, she attracted everyone's attention. "Good evening, Sister Louie," her sweet voice made my ears itch slightly, but what made my eyes itch even more was her left hand. The jade bracelet on her wrist, with a dark red luster. "Oh my God, I'm really scared, it's a red jade bracelet again. It's a sin. Anchor, I suspect you have been screwed. Why do you wear red jade bracelets every day when you connect? It's so scary. Change it. Sister, take off the jade bracelet quickly, it will kill people." I was really confused. Are we trapped in a cycle of horror stories? Ignoring their wailing, I stared at the screen and quoted directly, Sister, this bracelet on your hand is 1 million, I buy it." The girl was startled, curved her eyebrows, and said, "This bracelet is not for sale." Then, she took out a pair of gourd-shaped earrings from the side, smiled and said to the camera, "Today I want to sell this, Sister Louie, look." I saw that she was deliberately avoiding the topic, so I didn't ask. Squinting my eyes to look at the earrings carefully. "Bring it closer." She did as she was told and moved forward. After I saw it clearly, I frowned and asked, "Where did you get this pair of earrings?" The girl said, "It was a birthday gift from my grandmother when I was a child. She said it could bless me with peace, and I have always kept it by her side, but recently I have been having strange dreams. Someone called my name in the dream. I wanted to answer, but I couldn't make a sound. After waking up, I was exhausted and often fainted." "Anemia?" The doctor said no. She added, "My work and rest schedule is very regular, and there is no such thing as staying up late." I turned my head to pretend to think, but my eyes fell elsewhere. She suddenly touched the bracelet, and the flow of things inside suddenly stopped. I continued, "This pair of earrings is in the shape of a gourd, which has been one of the items for exorcising evil spirits since ancient times. Gourd is homophonic too, and is often used as a feng shui mascot. Gourds can change luck and exorcise evil spirits. Your pair of earrings is a protective item made by your grandmother specifically for you. Don't lose it, and don't sell it easily. Because it is made of hand bones." The commanderia exclaimed, "Hand bones? Is it so scary?" A strong man put his feet into the quilt at this time. "Don't scare me. I am timid. Is the anchor talking nonsense again? Hand bones, human hand bones?" I was calm and replied to the questioning comment, "In addition to humans, are there other animals that call their claws hands?" The barrage was quiet for a few seconds, wondering if there are such creatures in nature. I continued to tell the girl that I am not interested in earrings, but I like the bracelet on your hand. "Can I ask where you got it from?" The girl suddenly looked up and looked straight at the camera, her tight mouth corners slowly curled up. "How much do you want?" I said softly, 1 million. Before she responded, the commanderia started to make a fuss again. "Outrageous, the last person offered 100,000 yuan to sell it to you and you didn't want it, now you are willing to buy it for 1 million yuan? Are you crazy? Is this the bracelet from 2 days ago? No way? It can't be so weird, right? Oh my God, so scared. The plot is too familiar. Anchor, please censor it. I really admire this group of spectators." I asked the girl, "Sister, who gave you the bracelet?" "It was delivered by courier." She suddenly coughed, covering her chest with her hand as if she was not feeling well, her body tilted to the side, and the camera also tilted. The surrounding environment appeared, blue curtains, white long tables, rows of colorful thermoses, as if in a dormitory. I asked, "Where are you? Let's meet." When she heard that I wanted to meet her, she panicked, her face turned pale, and she stammered out a university address. She was not far from me, and I was taking notes when I suddenly heard her scream. She fell on the bedside with a painful look on her face. Her left hand tightly grasped the jade bracelet on her wrist. It hurts so much, the bracelet is so tight." In the picture, the girl's right hand slowly exposed bones from the fingertips to the wrist. It didn't look like she was stabbed or scraped with a knife, but something swallowed it along with the flesh and blood. Fuck, her hand is slowly turning into bones. Am I blind? Help Look at the blood jade bracelet, the color of the blood jade bracelet has turned black. I'm about to vomit. Is this true? The connection on the other side was interrupted. I picked up my backpack and rushed to her university. I opened the door with the dormitory auntie and saw the girl lying on the ground, her body facing up, her face as white as paper, and one arm was skinny and terrifying. The dormitory auntie was so scared that she sat on the ground. I walked over to check her breath, and it was faint. Fortunately, the bracelet didn't stay with her for long, and it didn't take her life. I asked the dormitory aunt to call an ambulance, and then searched for the blood jade bracelet in the dormitory. I didn't find it, it disappeared in front of me again. It seemed to be playing hide and seek, which was a bit interesting. I accompanied the girl to the hospital, waited for her to wake up and asked, and got the details of the jade bracelet. The girl's name is Yen Meng, a sophomore. Last week, she and her classmates had dinner outside the school and met a strange man. The man was very thin, with dark circles under his eyes, as if he was malnourished. The man suddenly came over and asked the girl to borrow money, saying that he had lost his wallet and had no money to pay the bill. Yen Meng looked at the boss suspiciously, and confirmed that the man did not have money, so she helped pay for the meal without thinking much. I thought that I would be fine after getting a thank you, but I saw the man suddenly pulled up his sleeves, exposing his wrist, and pulled out a beautiful red jade bracelet for her. Yen Meng quickly refused, and almost dropped it several times. The man begged, "No, please try it on." Yen Meng had no choice but to try it on, and it was unexpectedly beautiful. Even her friends said that she looked very good wearing it. Back in the dormitory, Meng was thinking about the jade bracelet, and she was restless for the next few days. Someone called her name in her dream, she didn't know who it was, and wanted to respond, but some force stopped her from answering. Then one day she woke up and found that one of the earrings on the pillow had a crack. I asked her, "How did you find me?" Yen Meng showed admiration and said, "I am your fan." She didn't watch the last live broadcast, and I looked at her suspiciously. Yen Meng explained that I didn't feel well that day and went to bed. I received the jade bracelet in the morning. My roommate thought it was a gift from a friend, so I took a photo of it and posted it online. The post suddenly became popular. Netizens said that this bracelet sucks blood and will suck people into a mummy. I hesitated for a moment, but still told her that the last person who wore it was dead. Yen Meng's face turned pale again, and her voice began to tremble as she asked, "Then, will I die?" I patted her hand and answered soothingly, "No, it won't look for you again." After leaving the hospital, I turned into a small shop and ate a bowl of snail noodles. Finally, I got a reply on my phone, "This thing has become evil and will instruct people to do things for it. If you want to catch it, you must lure it." I understand, I need bait. I rubbed my hands and muttered excitedly, "Then I'm going to go." Just as I was about to put my phone back, I received another message, "I will send someone to help you, don't mess around." After returning, I started a live broadcast and reported the progress to everyone. It also revealed that the jade bracelets in these 2 times were the same evil thing. Netizens began to criticize me, "Since you can save girls, why not save men? Isn't this murder?" That's right, the man died miserably. At that time, I said that I would sell it to the anchor for 100,000, but the anchor refused to buy it. Watching the man die and gaining traffic. The 2 saints upstairs, you type on the keyboard to save it. I typed a reply. Haven't you seen it? The skin is cut and the blood is not flowing out. Do you think it can still be saved? The man said that all 108 people in his family had passed away one after another. I went to ask about it. The man moved to the altar a year ago, and the neighbor said that he was the only one. So, who was the 108 people he mentioned? Netizens in the comment area were shocked. There are 108 people in the safe house. Come in quickly. You changed the number upstairs, I am almost scared to death. So, who are the 108 people? Anchor, don't ask us. We are here to see you collect evil things, not to listen to ghost stories. I guess this 108th person is the ghost who died in the blood jade bracelet, and he has been living with him as a family member. A cool breeze blew in from the window. I looked at the screen with a blue light and typed a few words with my fingers. 108 is not a number, it is a code name. During the summer vacation when I was 12 years old, I went to a village with my master to collect evil things. I didn't like to do anything, so I sneaked out to play. I happened to hear the old people in the village chatting, and heard the story of the blood jade bracelet for the first time. In ancient times, people loved jade more than gold. Many officials spared no expense to find jade with pure colors. Among them, there is a kind called red jade, which is very rare. However, a jade shop suddenly started selling red jade, which is bright and is a very pure red color. At one time, it attracted many rich people to buy it. There was a queue every day at the door of this jade shop to buy red jade. Some people also suspected that red jade was hard to find, and it was really strange that there was a long queue at his shop. Someone interrupted, "Dye it." The man was quickly hit by the person next to him, uneducated. At that time, it was all natural jade, so how could there be technology to dye jade? Do you think it is the current technology and hard work? The old man smiled. It's not completely wrong, there are plants that can be used for dyeing. It's very troublesome, and it was not until later generations that it was discovered and adopted. At that time, the simplest method was to use blood to nourish jade. The blood seeped into the jade, and if it lasted for a long enough time, you could get a piece of blood-colored red jade. The person who interrupted opened his mouth and asked, "How to raise it?" The old man said, "There are many ways in folklore. For example, put the jade into the body of animals such as cattle, sheep, and dogs, wait for 2 to 3 years and then take it out. If you are lucky, it will grow blood jade." An idea suddenly popped into my mind and asked, what if we use human blood? Those people were all stunned. They looked back at me and were shocked by my innocent words. The old man knocked his pipe on the sole of his shoe and said, "The ancients believed that jade had spirituality. Putting a piece of jade in the mouth after death can protect the body from decay. After death, the jade slides from the throat into the body, absorbs blood, and slowly the jade will turn into blood jade." I followed up with another question, so that jade shop uses dead people to grow jade? The old man shook his head and said, "He uses living people. Men, women, and even children. Boss Song of that jade shop loves blood jade bracelets the most and makes a lot of money with blood jade bracelets. But suddenly one day he died in his own yard, and hundreds of blood jade bracelets in the shop disappeared. The most terrifying thing is that there are hundreds of skeletons buried under the ground of the jade shop. More than a decade later, the blood jade bracelets appeared in pawn shops, jade shops, small shops, etc. A young lady bought it and wore it for a month, and suddenly died, suddenly. Her death was miserable, as if her blood was drained. Not long after, more than 100 people in her family died one after another, and their deaths were exactly the same as hers. When dealing with the corpses, someone found the blood jade bracelets that fell in the middle of the corpses, picked them up and stuffed them into their sleeves. After the story was told, I grabbed the water cup and took a sip, and saw the barrage become active. I declare that today's story is the most terrifying. I'm going to go to sleep with my parents. Anchor, it's a pity that you don't write novels. It's too immersive. I also have red jade at home, I'm so scared. What are you afraid of? Who uses blood to nourish jade now? Psychopath, are you just afraid of this story? Didn't you notice that the blood jade bracelet appeared in the story? The barrage seemed to have been paused, suddenly disappeared, and then appeared again after a few seconds. Ah, the same one? It can't be such a coincidence, right? How can a broken bracelet last so long? Science, prosperity, and democracy, science, prosperity and democracy, science, prosperity and democracy. Host, why don't you find a Taoist priest? I always feel that thing is coming for you. Agree. The second time I connected to the blood jade bracelet, this is more accurate than buying lottery tickets. It's not so weird, right? Host, connect again? I listen to advice and prepare to connect for the third time. Before connecting, I saw a comment with an exclamation mark reminding me, "Host, there is a person standing behind you." I shuddered, grabbed the water cup and turned to throw it out. But I saw a man in a black Zhongshan suit, with handsome features, fair skin, gold-rimmed glasses on his nose, and his lips slightly pursed, looking at me quietly. I breathed a sigh of relief, reached out to turn off the live broadcast sound, and looked at him. He said he would send someone, but he actually sent himself. "Don't you recognize me?" The man's voice was cold, but low and gentle. I pulled up the corner of my mouth and smiled softly and said, "Senior brother, why are you here?" Before he answered, I counted on my fingers, and it had been 3 years since we last met. Blood jade bracelet. He was as frugal as before. Inviting him to sit on the sofa, I took out a bottle of Coke from the refrigerator and handed it to him, only to see him frowning and staring. "Sorry, this is mine." "Senior brother, wait a moment, I'll make you tea." I quickly took the water to make tea, and then sat down and looked at my senior brother. Li Xuanchu, my master Li Qinglian has a total of 6 disciples. Ranked 3, Li Xuanchu, 8 years older than me, but looks like the youngest. My senior brothers often tease him in the group, baby face. Li Xuanchu never accepts teasing and rarely chats. I occasionally send some evil things to the group and ask them to identify them. He will come out to say a few words when he finds something interesting. Knowing his character, I didn't waste much time and got straight to the point. "Senior brother, is this the blood jade bracelet that the master didn't take back as rumored?" Li Xuanchu took a sip of tea and put it down, looking up. His eyes were clear and bright. "Probably." This was the first time I heard Li Xuanchu answer so ambiguously. Then asked, "How to find it out?" "The first time it was taken away by a man, and the second time it disappeared inexplicably. It's all my fault for going late." Li Xuanchu looked at me and said, "It has nothing to do with you. It has become an evil thing and has thoughts. It will manipulate ghosts to do things for itself to make money." I was shocked. Make money? Does it want to become a human as a jade artifact? What's good about being a human? Li Xuanchu didn't say anything, picked up the teacup and drank. I was anxious and wanted to know everything about the bracelet. But I looked at the clock on the wall and it was already 1 a.m. I looked at my senior brother who looked tired and said, "Senior brother, the guest room has been cleaned up, you should go to bed early." I sent him into the room and couldn't help but follow him. "Senior brother, I will be the bait this time, you help me next to me." "No." He suddenly turned around and rejected me. I was about to argue with him when I heard him say, "Its target is you." Because of what my senior brother said, I slept very uneasy last night. I don't know if it's a psychological suggestion, but I always feel like someone is by my side. I went to the police station with him in the morning and asked someone to investigate the cases similar to men in the past 10 years. The number was as high as 1,000. I, who live in the modern world, can't believe it. "Senior brother, are these cases true?" Li Xuanchu changed into a casual outfit, and his temperament was elegant like a teacher. He answered me while flipping through the records, "Really? It's just that these cases are very special and it's not convenient to show them to the public." "Is that inconvenient?" "I don't dare." When I was slacking off at work, I joined a lot of groups about supernatural stories and horror stories. Some people say that the country has a department that specializes in handling special cases, and its whereabouts are mysterious and almost no one knows. I played with it and watched him read the information carefully. Suddenly I remembered the live broadcast that I hurriedly went offline yesterday, and hesitated and asked Li Xuanchu, "Brother, I want to go out and broadcast a live broadcast." "Well, don't go far." He raised his head slightly. I walked out of the police station, walked a little further east, sat down in front of the flower bed, turned on the live broadcast, and 1,000 people entered the live broadcast room in seconds. "Anchor, I thought you were dead, woo woo woo." "You are not dead yet?" I replied, are you polite? Bah, 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 don't curse me, Louis, isn't he alive and well? Master Louis, are you in the human world now? There is also the sun, it should be. I replied, because it was a bit noisy outside, I typed a reply. I'm fine, the person yesterday was my brother. The comments started to go wild. I said that such a good-looking person couldn't be a ghost. Is my senior brother also a Taoist priest? Which Taoist temple is he in? I want to go and worship. How old is my senior brother this year? Are you married? I'm a little girl. A bunch of old perverts. I asked them if they wanted to know about the blood jade bracelet. The comments quickly returned to the topic, I want to. Where is the evil thing now? Host, you should collect this evil thing as soon as possible. It's too scary. I collected all the jade bracelets at home. I'm really afraid that it will attract the same kind. I haven't spent all my tens of millions of assets. Get out of here, put it in my account and I spent it for you in one day. I squatted on the flower bed and typed slowly, my senior brother is here to help me. Don't worry, he won't hurt anyone again. Can you broadcast live when collecting evil things? I really want to watch it. I want to watch it +1. I'm just about to write a supernatural novel, all of which are materials. To start a live broadcast, I have to ask my senior brother if it's okay. I just typed 2 words, and a big white hand appeared in the camera and fell on my shoulder. I almost fainted at a glance. I quickly jumped down the steps and ran a few meters. I looked back and saw a man standing in front of the flower bed. He was wearing a black hat and a white mask on his head, revealing a pair of cold eyes staring at me. The busy street was bustling with people, but the atmosphere at this moment was so cold that it made people tremble. I didn't bring anything to exorcise evil spirits when I came out, and I didn't expect it to find me so quickly. It's just as my senior brother said that its target is me. I swallowed nervously. It's not that I'm afraid, but I don't know how to deal with it. He suddenly moved his body, moved his feet, and walked towards me. I seemed to be frozen, waiting to come over, and suddenly someone called my name. The man suddenly stopped, raised his head slightly, and then turned around and left quickly. Li Xuanchu ran over and pulled me, calling out, Xiao Lu. I turned around and grabbed my senior brother's arm, and said anxiously, Senior brother, I saw the man who took the blood jade bracelet. He lowered his head and raised his hand to wipe the sweat from my temples, and asked in a gentle tone, Did he scare you? I nodded and answered, a little. Anyone would be scared by a hand that suddenly appeared on the shoulder. Li Xuanchu touched my head like he did when he was a child, and then said, Go home and prepare, and take him down tonight. I remembered the live broadcast when I got in the car, and saw that the barrage was asking, Is the anchor still alive? I quickly reported that I was safe, alive, and the net was taken down tonight. After returning home, I sat on a chair and watched Li Xuanchu prepare things. Seals, talisman paper, wooden sword, these are not rare magic tools. He packed them and took me out. He brought a bag, but I had nothing in my hands. Senior brother, it seems that you can't use me much. He said, I pouted, very unhappy. Li Xuanchu smiled and said, You can drive. I widened my eyes and asked, Can I only be a driver? Li Xuanchu's expression suddenly became serious, Xiao Lu, you can't deal with him. I also instantly understood the danger of this evil spirit collection. He hooked the key and shook it and said, Okay, I'll cheer you up and cheer you up. On the way, I drove according to the navigation given by Li Xuanchu, and found that it was actually a Taoist temple in the suburbs. I searched on the internet and found that this Taoist temple was built in recent years and is under construction. It has not yet been open to the public. I asked in confusion, Why is he here? Li Xuanchu replied, I want to become an immortal. I accidentally pressed the wiper, so I quickly turned it off. Li Xuanchu said, I have read the detailed records of the 1,000 accidental deaths. They all bought blood jade bracelets at a high price, and then died suddenly within 3 to 5 years. The lucky ones found a Taoist priest to solve the problem, and the unlucky ones had no one left in their families. What do these people have in common? They have the same blood type, all Rh-negative blood, which is a rare blood type. No way, a broken bracelet is picky about food? I hammered the steering wheel angrily, always feeling that something was wrong, and suddenly came to my senses. But I am not Rh-negative blood, why is it targeting me? Li Xuanchu didn't say anything, but held his hands in front of his chest, staring at the front, and said in a very light tone, I want to know too. When we arrived at the place, it was gloomy and dark all around, and there was not even a bird chirping. Li Xuanchu unbuckled his seatbelt and said to me, don't be afraid. I nodded heavily, I am not afraid with my senior brother here. I followed him up the stairs. The Taoist temple was still under repair, and cement, wood and other things could be seen everywhere. Halfway through the walk, Li Xuanchu suddenly stopped and reached back to stop me. I subconsciously grabbed his sleeve. He whispered, he is just ahead. I whispered back, okay. I took out my phone and started the live broadcast, turned off the sound, leaving only the screen. It's so dark, I can't see anything. My sister is so powerful. I'm so scared. I'm the only one watching the live broadcast at home. Are you sure you're alone upstairs? Maybe there's a room full of people watching with you? After walking up 100 steps, we arrived at the main entrance of the Taoist temple. I looked inside after Li Sun came out. A man walked out of the darkness. He was wearing a gray Taoist robe, his hair tied into a bun, but one arm was half-sleeved, and the exposed wrist was wearing the blood-glowing blood jade bracelet. This time I finally saw the man's appearance clearly. His face was old and his face was as pale as his hands, which made people feel uncomfortable. He stared at me blankly and said, so you have helpers around you. I snorted, this hasn't been investigated yet. I not only have helpers, but also thugs. Hand over the bracelet, and I'll spare your life. The man smiled grimly, immortality? Suddenly, a light bulb went off in my head, you are a dead man, a ghost. The ghost snorted, not stupid. Li Xuanchu pulled off his backpack, took out the written talisman paper, and began to lay out the array. Hundreds of years ago, you were doing evil everywhere, and you still wanted to become an immortal. Today, I'll send you off. What a big tone. The ghost smiled grimly and suddenly rushed towards us. Li Xuanchu stood up, pinched his fingers, and shouted at him, break. The ghost was instantly fixed, surrounded by golden light, screamed at the top of his throat, struggled hard, and escaped. The hall was dark, and it slowly lit up, with stars and red light like spiritual fire. 1, 2, countless souls appeared behind the ghost, densely packed, tall and thin, men, women, old and children, with blood jade bracelets on their wrists, staring at you like countless eyes. The live broadcast barrage could not see those souls, but countless red lights could be seen, and they were so scared that they screamed. Goosebumps appeared layer by layer. What are those? Red flashing light, blood jade bracelets? Thousands and tens of thousands are too numerous to count. Anchor, why don't you run? What a joke. How can I run away with so many things staring at me? I continued to watch my senior brother's movements, which were neat and clean, so handsome. The ghost was a little overwhelmed by the continuous attacks. At this time, the blood jade bracelet on his wrist suddenly moved, like a swimming fish, moving from the wrist to the neck, and suddenly strangled the ghost's neck. As the bracelet tightened, the ghost's facial features twisted and deformed, creaking, and a voice that did not belong to him came out of his mouth. I want a body, I want her body. Li Xuanchu recited the formula indifferently, stretched out the wooden sword and stabbed the man's chest, and the blood jade bracelet instantly came to his chest and held the wooden sword. I want to become an immortal, I want to become an immortal. I have sucked the blood of so many people for 300 years, just to become an immortal. You, an unknown Taoist priest, dare to stop me. Today, I will let you die here and become the foundation of my Taoist temple. Ha 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 ha, listening to his incantation-like words, I was worried about Li Xuanchu. I secretly pulled out a jade card from my chest. This is a life-saving card made by my master, and it is also a magic weapon that can kill evil things at critical moments. Li Xuanchu shouted, wishful thinking. I took out the emperor bell and threw it on his head. I turned around and threw out a few talismans and began to chant the formula. The blood jade bracelet wailed through the mouth of the ghost, "It's so hot. It's so hot. Hee hee, I haven't seen this feeling for a long time. It's been 100 years, and you are still alive, Li Qinglian?" This evil thing actually called my master's name directly. I pinched a formula to him, and he wailed, turned back and shouted at me, "Little girl, how dare you sneak attack me? When I defeat your senior brother, I will enjoy your beautiful body." I vomited, "You are too greasy. This evil thing is more disgusting than the male lead of the idol drama I watched a few days ago." The sudden laughter gently cut through the air, and I looked up and saw that Li Xuanchu actually laughed. He could actually laugh. Li Xuanchu said, "Stay away." I walked to the side obediently and found that those souls also moved with me, which made my scalp numb. Gradually, the blood jade bracelet began to dominate the body of the ghost, and the mouth opened and closed and roared. Li Qinglian, the black-hearted old Taoist priest, would have died in the hands of this old man if I hadn't used the clone technique to escape. He is not dead yet? Ridiculous. Li Xuanchu rotated the wooden sword and stabbed him in the limbs. Don't be rude. Haha, the apprentices that old Manly took in are as boring as him. But this little girl makes me like her very much. After watching her in the live broadcast room for more than half a year, she is very suitable to be my container. I couldn't help but cover my ears and silently recite the Qingxingju in my heart. The live commentary also became busy. How can he be so greasy? Be a good evil creature. Host, did you vomit? I did anyway. Did he suck the blood of the Oil King? A funny horror movie, the villain dies because of talking too much. Let's end it quickly. Li Sun waved his long arm and shouted to me, "Xiao Lu, chant the fire spell." I immediately ran over to stand beside him and started chanting the spell, and saw that the ghost's body suddenly burned. The souls connected behind him began to stir, as if trying to break free from the blood jade bracelet. I opened my eyes and saw their painful and desperate expressions. A memory appeared on the head of each soul. Some people received a blood jade bracelet when they got married, and died suddenly with their babies after getting pregnant. Some people spent money to buy a blood jade bracelet to honor their elders, but ended up destroying their families. Some people have never seen a blood jade bracelet, but because their ancestors were cursed, they foresaw death. It hurts. A sad female voice sounded behind my ear, hair brushed my neck, and cold lips pressed against my ears. "You burned me so much." Li Xuanchu suddenly turned around and slapped me on the shoulder. I grimaced in pain, and when I looked back, a female ghost with long hair and red eyes was lying on my shoulder and smiling at me. I screamed, and reflexively grabbed her hair and pulled it hard, and threw it to the ground. I was scared to death. Making a ghost movie? I patted my chest and looked at the grinning female ghost on the ground. The clothes she wore were obviously not from this era, but the red wedding dress worn by ancient married ladies. The color was strangely red, and it was dripping with blood, as if it had just been fished out of a pool of blood. She slowly stood up, and Li Xuanchu stood in front of me. Finally forced out, I took a breath of cold air. It turned out that this was the true form of the evil blood jade bracelet. The female ghost smiled coquettishly. "I am finally free. I have been trapped in the jade bracelet for so long, and you let me out, little Taoist priest." I was a little confused about this scene. The reason why the blood jade bracelet became an evil object was that it used human blood to nourish the jade. Therefore, it should be a collection of all souls. How could it be a person? She seemed to know what I was thinking, grinned, and explained, "Yes, the bracelet contains tens of thousands of souls whose blood I sucked dry. But I am the blood jade bracelet itself." The profiteer knew that I didn't want to marry him, so he lied to me that I would use blood to nourish the jade and sell it for money, and then give me half of the money earned, and then let me go. I was too stupid to believe it. But he thought it was too long, and I didn't cooperate so much. Then he imprisoned me in the room, mixed my flesh and blood with jade to cast a blood jade bracelet, and sealed my soul in this bracelet forever. I was horrified and my feet were weak when I heard it. The senior brother held me with one hand. The female ghost continued, "He lied to me again that if I sucked enough blood, I could become evil and become a normal person. I cooperated with him to kill many people, hurt one person after another, and made money that I couldn't spend in my lifetime. The female ghost's miserable and shrill laughter resounded through the hall, crying and laughing like crazy. He cheated me. I hate him for all eternity. I want his reincarnation, his descendants, and all the ancestors related to him to die in my hands. I want to become an immortal. After she shouted, the souls of tens of thousands of people also wailed at the same time, and the sound waves were about to overturn the ceiling of the Taoist temple. So the number 108 in the mouth of the ghost, as I guessed, is not the number of people. It is the descendants of the profiteers for generations. If the blood is the same, they will be selected as blood weapons, and let the blood weapons kill the family members. Looking at this scene in front of me, I really want to call someone now. I feel that my senior brother and I can't stand it. Li Xuanchu suddenly turned around. Xiaolu, what are you doing? Chant the spell quickly. I was startled by the shouting, sat on the ground, closed my eyes, and started chanting the spell, more seriously than the exam. Try to recall the hundreds of spells taught by my master. I could feel something floating towards me, rubbing against me, trying to break through my heart. But I, Shenlui, did not become a disciple through the back door. I quickly pinched a seal with my fingers, turned my palm and slapped it hard on the ground. The moment I opened my eyes, the black shadows that were attached to me were shaken away. I quickly pulled out the talisman paper and threw it at the black shadows, and they quickly burned and turned into ashes. I could burn to death. I got up excitedly and prepared to throw the talisman paper one by one, but I looked around and saw it everywhere. Li Xuanchu had already suppressed the female ghost, turned his head and shouted at me, Xiaolu, the Emperor Bell. I quickly looked down and saw the Emperor Bell rolling on the corner of the table. I ran over to pick it up, but it was picked up by a little kid, holding the heavy Emperor Bell in his two fat hands and smiling at me. Good baby, give it to me. He shook his head and stepped back. Be good, sister will let you free soon. The little boy still refused. My senior brother urged me. I had to pinch the seal, let go. After getting the Emperor Bell, I quickly returned to my senior brother. He pulled back the wooden sword and stabbed the female ghost in the head again. Open the big one. Yeah. The game radar opened in my mind. Open the second big one in the game, our skill. Li Xuanchu was silent for half a second, and even said with a slight smile, shake. I understood instantly, chanted a spell, and the Emperor Bell flew up from my hand, spun wildly above my head, shook the magic bell, and the gods and ghosts all admired it. I lowered my head, as if I saw myself standing in an open space, surrounded by tens of thousands of people, screaming and trying to break free, shouting, I want to get out, let me out, I'm in so much pain. At this time, my trouser legs suddenly tightened, and the little boy just raised his head, his eyes became black holes, which scared me and almost stopped chanting. I heard him say, Sister, play with me, sister, don't leave me, I will be obedient and wait for you to pick me up. Listening to his words, I seemed to enter a fantasy world. I saw a little boy with thick eyebrows and big eyes sitting on Shirtai Street, counting ants, with his chin in his hand. Behind him was a temple. Pedestrians coming in and out couldn't help but look back at him. After a long time, he suddenly stood up, turned his head and greeted the sister and read happily, Sister, you finally came out. The girl took his hand and gently held it. Her right hand touched the top of his head. Xiaochen, is he good? The little boy nodded shyly. I am very good, sister, let's go home quickly. On the way, the little boy complained that he didn't want to go to the private school. The girl gently said that Xiaochen wanted to study and grow up to be a man who stood up to the sky. Sister promised you that she would pick you up every evening, okay? Did my sister agree? Yeah. We'll never change even if we make a promise for 100 years. The two of them left, talking and laughing, and I followed them back home. I saw a middle-aged man who looked 70% like the girl suddenly yelled at her, You're going to get married tomorrow, and you're still running around, and you're taking Xiaochen with you, are you asking for a beating? Dad. Xiaochen spoke for his sister first, Don't blame my sister, I asked my sister to take me out to play, my sister is not wrong. Shut up. The man angrily threw the teacup and ordered the servants outside, "Take the young master away." "I won't leave, my sister won't get married." "My sister is my wife, Xiaochen doesn't want to leave." Still saying outrageous words, the man was furious, kicked down a chair beside him and cursed, "Bastard, bastard. Take him away quickly." The boy was too young and had no strength, so he was dragged out of the hall by two servants. The girl wanted to go back and beg, but the man pulled her arm and yelled, "Qin Shuyu, I raised you for 14 years, not for you to seduce my son. Your mother is shameless, do you let her do what she wants?" The girl's face was pale, she knelt on the ground and trembled to apologize, "Master, was wrong, you were never to Xiaochen." The man shook the girl away, turned back to sit on the chair, panting, "Okay, you will marry Master Song tomorrow, go back and prepare now, and don't leave the room again. If there is any mistake, I can't do anything about your mother's illness." The girl burst into tears and kept kowtowing to the man to treat her mother well. But this man is obviously her father. Then the scene changed again, the girl was sitting in front of the bronze mirror in a red wedding dress, and her face was exactly the same as that of a female ghost. She suddenly raised her eyes and stared at me as if she saw me. "I feel a little dizzy, are you using a beauty trap on me?" "I'm sorry, I only get mad at handsome guys." Just when I was about to break through the illusion, I suddenly felt a pain in my wrist. Li Xuanchu pulled me back from the illusion and blamed me, "Stupid Xiao Lu." He quickly wiped my head and said, "Keep chanting." Then he turned around and continued to deal with the female ghost. I cursed myself in my heart, then turned my head and looked, almost scared to death. The female ghost was covered with blood jade bracelets all over her body, shocking and weird, like that Christmas tree. She opened her bloody mouth and roared, "I want to become an immortal. I want you, Shenlui, to be my container. I want this Taoist temple to be my immortal residence, and no one can stop me." Wishful thinking. Li Sun sneered and rushed over with a wooden sword in hand. I continued to chant and shake the emperor bell, and finally worked together to subdue her. The hall was empty, leaving only us and the female ghost lying on the ground. Blood kept flowing from the corners of her mouth, and blood was sprayed from all parts of her body, and a pool of blood soon formed under her. "Haha, I want to become an immortal." Li Xuanchu lowered his head and asked, "Who told you that you can become an immortal by killing people?" The female ghost murmured to herself, "He lied to me, everyone is lying to me." Li Xuanchu wanted to burn her, but I stopped him. I walked over and squatted, calling out her real name, Qin Shuyu. I asked her, "Do you really want to become an immortal? Or do you want to go back to the past and see Xiaochen again?" She stopped talking in a trance, opened her eyes, and looked at me with empty eyes. I took a breath and slowly said, "Xiaochen died on the path where you got married." She stared at her bloodshot eyes and asked, "How do you know?" I sighed and replied to her, "He was by my side just now, grabbing my trouser legs and calling me sister." "He has been by your side all the time, don't you know?" Qin Shuyu suddenly panted violently, "Impossible. He can't be by my side. I don't know, I can't not know. This is impossible." She coughed up another mouthful of blood. Li Xuanchu pulled me away and said to her, "It's over. Impossible, Xiaochen, Xiaochen." Qin Shuyu grabbed with both hands and tried to get up, but fell down again. I rarely saw such a tragic scene. I felt a little blocked when I saw it, and turned my head gently. Li Xuanchu took out the talisman paper from his arms, closed his eyes and chanted a few words, and the talisman paper lit up and fell on Qin Shuyu's body. Her body burned, and the blood on the ground also burned, and the fire was raging. Qin Shuyu was still calling that name, Xiaochen. Suddenly a clear child's voice sounded, "Sister." I looked at Qin Shuyu's expression in the fire, from shock to joy, and finally relief. Slowly closed my eyes. "Sister, you come to pick me up." She heard it. The main hall of the Taoist temple fell into darkness again, cold and silent. I called, "Li Xuanchu, Li Xuanchu?" He didn't respond. I reached out and touched it, and suddenly touched a cold hand. My heart trembled, and I remembered the big white hand that hurt people. Is this thing still alive? Suddenly, a cluster of flames lit up, and Li Xuanchu pinched the burning talisman paper, smiled faintly and asked, "Don't you call me senior brother?" I calmed my mind and replied, "Senior brother." Li Xuanchu looked around and said, "Let's go." I said, bent down to pick up the magic weapon and the mobile phone that I had thrown on the ground a long time ago. I don't know when the live broadcast was interrupted, and the battery was less than 10%. We walked out of the Taoist temple and came to the car. The sky was gradually turning white. On the way, I asked Li Xuanchu, "Is the bracelet also burned?" Li Xuanchu, I muttered, "I want to take it back and make a small thing to sell on the small yellow car." Really, the bracelet in my hand flew away. Li Xuanchu had a dull expression, and suddenly turned around and asked, "What is the small yellow car?" I was stunned by the question, and seeing that he really didn't know, I explained it in a gibberish, e-commerce, online shopping, live broadcast. He seemed a little interested, but when he heard me invite him to live broadcast, he flatly refused. After returning home, I slept for a day and didn't go live until 8 o'clock in the evening. Everyone couldn't wait to know what happened that day. I told it again with a voice. Some praised me, and some scolded me. The screen suddenly went black halfway through. At first I could still hear the sound, but later I couldn't hear anything. I will be more professional in the future and buy a bracket to live broadcast. The anchor really succeeded in subduing the evil creature. I think it's fake. There are fake videos, and live broadcasts can also be fake. Everyone, just watch it for fun. TSK, what if I scare you to death? I chatted with them for a few words, and heard the next door hitting the wall with a hammer again, disturbing the neighbors in the middle of the night. "Stop knocking!" I shouted to the next door. I took my phone and sent a message in the community group, "Hammer, hammer, hammer, you are the king of hammers? Hammer a coffin and sleep in it." After venting, I told everyone the next time to connect, and then turned off the live broadcast. I came to the living room and asked Li Xuanchu, who was sitting on the sofa leisurely drinking tea and watching Peking opera, "Brother, when are you leaving?" "I'll see you off." He looked up and said, "I'm not leaving." I looked at him in surprise. Li Xuanchu suddenly turned his head and looked out the window and said, "The person next door to you is dead." The end. Don't tell them you can see. This is what I found under the bed on a crumpled tissue with this sentence written on it. 3 months ago, I became blind in a car accident. In order to take better care of me, my parents and I moved to the suburbs far away from the city. Just last night, I miraculously regained my eyesight. Just when I was about to tell my parents the good news, I suddenly found a crumpled tissue under the bed. I have a strong obsession with cleanliness, so I took the tissue out. The words on the tissue made me frown. Don't tell them you can see. The handwriting on the tissue was crooked, as if someone had written it in a hurry. There was no one else here, and this they obviously referred to my parents. I had no idea who stuffed this tissue under my bed. In the past 3 months only my parents and my husband Ji Yan have come to my room. At this time, there was a sudden knock on the door, and my mother's kind voice sounded behind the door, "Mo, Mom stewed some bird's nest for you." I threw the tissue into the trash can. But when I opened the door, my pupil shrank suddenly. I saw a strange woman standing at the door with a bowl in her hand, looking at me with a smile. Her lips were painted bright red, and the smile on her face looked so weird. This was clearly not my mother. I took a step back and looked at her in horror. My mother looked kind, but this woman looked very smart. Her facial features were not similar to my mother's. But the strangest thing was that her voice was exactly the same as my mother's. I was about to ask who she was, but suddenly remembered the words on the tissue just now. The woman took a step closer to me worriedly and asked, "Momo, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable?" "Mom, just put the bird's nest here, I'll eat it later." I fumbled and sat on the bed. The woman continued, "Momo, the bird's nest is very hot, how about I feed you?" I immediately rejected the woman. "Mom, I'm a little sleepy, I want to sleep for a while, I'll let it cool down before eating." The woman nodded and went out without saying anything. When she closed the door, I breathed a sigh of relief. My back was completely wet with cold sweat. Where did my real mother go? Who is this woman? I was really worried about my mother, so I opened the door and went out. I walked out of the room and saw a man sitting on the sofa in the living room with his back to me reading a newspaper. This person must be my father. I looked around and made sure that the woman was not in the living room. I lowered my voice and shouted, "Dad." The man turned his head and I saw his face. In an instant, fear swept over my whole body. Because what I saw was not the face of my familiar father, but a completely unfamiliar face. "Mo, what's wrong?" But from the man's mouth, my father's voice came out. I showed an ugly smile and answered, "Nothing, Dad." The woman's head popped out of the room next to me, and her bright red lips smiled particularly exaggeratedly. Mo, didn't you say you wanted to sleep for a while?" I smiled and said, "Mom, I'm not sleepy again." "Then Mom will feed you bird's nest." The woman brought out the bird's nest from the room and fed me one bite at a time. During this time I was very nervous, afraid that the woman would find out that I could see, but fortunately the woman did not notice my abnormality, and the sweet bird's nest in my mouth tasted like chewing wax. I had no idea whether the woman had added anything to the bird's nest. "What's wrong, Momo? Your face looks ugly, and you are sweating all the time." The woman still found that something was wrong with me. She approached me with concern, but her eyes stared straight into my eyes. Her eyes were very big, but there was a lot of white in her eyes, and her eyeballs were very small. I pretended to be disappointed and said, "I'm fine, I just don't know when my eyes will recover." The woman smiled and comforted me, "Momo, don't worry, you will definitely get better." I showed a very ugly and stiff smile. The woman touched my head lovingly. After returning to the room, I immediately locked the door and sat on the bed with a look of fear. Half a month ago, my husband Ji-Yin came to visit me once. My husband is a captain and his work is very busy. At that time, he and my parents had a lot of conversations, and he was even spoiled by my father and got drunk, and spent the night in the villa. In other words, half a month ago, my parents were still my real parents. I found my phone. When I couldn't see it before, I had been using voice mode. I immediately called Ji-Yin and the call was quickly connected. Ji-Yan's voice was as gentle as ever, "Momo, what's wrong? I just got off the plane and can come to see you soon." I said in a hurried tone, "Ji-Yin, what I'm going to tell you next may seem incredible to you, but what I said is true." Ji-Yin was silent for a moment and then said, "Momo, as long as you say it, I will believe it no matter what." I told Ji-Yin everything. It takes about an hour to drive here from the airport. I felt much more at ease when I thought that Ji-Yin would come. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door outside. "Momo, it's time to take medicine." I heard my father's voice outside. But I knew it wasn't my father. It was that strange man. My heart beat faster and I stared at the door. Seeing that I didn't say anything for a long time, the man began to turn the doorknob. "Why is the door locked, Momo? If you don't take medicine, your eyes will not get better." The man urged me to open the door, and I was determined not to open the door no matter what, unless Ji-Yin came over. "Are you asleep, this little guy?" The man smiled helplessly. Then I heard his footsteps coming downstairs, and I was relieved. Suddenly I felt something was wrong again, and I had a strong feeling of being watched. I hurried to the door and listened to the movement outside. There was no sound outside the door, and it sounded like the man had left. I was worried and lay down carefully, trying to see the movement outside through the crack in the door. And at this moment, I met a pair of eyes with small eyeballs and a lot of white. The man was lying under the crack in the door, staring at me with his eyes, and I was sweating all over at that moment. I pretended not to see it, and slowly fumbled on the ground. It was strange that my mobile phone had just fallen to the ground, and the eyes disappeared from the crack. I collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. They were very strange. This weird man and woman appeared beside me, and there must be an ulterior motive. I don't know where my parents have gone. Now, the only thing I can do is wait for Ji Yan to come. After waiting for an hour, I finally got a call from Ji Yan. Ji Yan's voice on the other end of the phone sounded very anxious. "Mo, where are you now?" Ji Yan's words made me feel very strange. "I'm in the villa." "You've been here before. You didn't find the wrong place, did you?" I was also very anxious. Ji Yan said very puzzledly, "I'm in the villa, but you and your uncle and aunt are not here. It's covered with dust, as if no one has lived here for a long time." His words also shocked me. Ji Yan also sent me a photo. I saw that the photo was indeed in the villa, but it was really as Ji Yan said. The villa was full of dust and it seemed that no one had lived there for a long time. The sofa was covered with thick dust, and there was even a layer of spider webs in the corners. This is clearly different from the villa I'm in now. But the layout is exactly the same as the villa I'm in. Suddenly I remembered that the man had put a newspaper on the coffee table before, and I quickly asked Ji Yan to take a photo for me. The photo came quickly. In the photo, there was indeed a newspaper on the coffee table. Judging from the time, it was today's newspaper. My heart beat very hard. The hand holding the phone kept shaking. At this moment, I almost collapsed. "Ji Yan, I'm in the villa. You don't believe me, and I can video chat with you. What happened? Am I still alive?" "Momo, don't cry. I absolutely believe you. What nonsense are you talking about? I have called the police. Don't be afraid. Listen to me now. Although I don't know what's going on, don't let them find out that you can see it before the police arrive. Although I don't know what their purpose is in pretending to be uncles and aunts, they should not hurt you at present. As long as you don't reveal the flaws, how much power do you have on your phone? I need you to keep talking to me." I looked at the power of my phone. I don't have the habit of charging before going to bed, so the power of my phone is only 15%, which can't last long. I hurried to look for the charging cable, but strangely, I couldn't find it after searching the whole room. I suddenly remembered that last night, when I didn't know my parents were fake, I had chatted with the couple at the dining table. At that time, I was listening to a novel while charging my phone, and I must have forgotten the charging cable there. The charging cable is downstairs. I went to get it. Looking outside the door, I gritted my teeth, turned the door, and went out. The corridor was very quiet, and it seemed that the couple should be in my parents' room. I walked downstairs quickly, and came to the restaurant, and saw that the charging cable was indeed there. I was delighted, and just as I was about to unplug the charging cable, I felt something strange behind me. I turned my head and saw an expressionless face. The woman's face was very close to me, and the corner of her mouth cracked into an exaggerated arc. "Momo, I just realized that you walked up the stairs much faster than before. Can you see it?" Fear rose from the soles of my feet to the top of my head at this moment, and my heart beat very hard. The woman's eyes with too much white stared at my eyes. "Mom, I will tell you if I can see it. It's just that my phone is out of battery, so I am in a hurry to walk. I have lived here for more than 3 months, so I walk fast naturally." I said very naturally. The woman smiled, stretched out her hands with bright red nail polish, and touched my face. Her fingers were as cold as snake skin, which made me shiver. I thought Momo could see it, but my mother was happy for nothing. "If Momo can see it, don't hide it from Dad and Mom, otherwise we will feel unhappy. Come on, give your phone to Mom, Mom will charge it for you." The woman took my phone. She looked down at my phone and asked, "Are you still talking to Ji Yan?" I was so nervous. Ji Yan's voice came from the other end of the phone. "Mom, I didn't spend too much time with Momo before. This time I asked for 14 days of leave to come back to accompany Momo." The woman smiled and said, "Come here quickly, let your dad make your favorite braised pork. Momo misses you so much." I hung up the phone for Momo to charge. It's too unsafe to answer the phone. Her voice and tone sounded like a good mother who loves her daughter very much. But only I know that she looks like she is staring at the phone, but her eyes are looking at me sideways. After the woman left, my back was already wet with cold sweat, and even my legs couldn't help shaking. Since Ji Yan can't find this place, I must leave the villa. I decided to leave here immediately when my phone was charged to 30%. Suddenly, I heard a creak sound from the kitchen. The door of the cupboard suddenly opened a gap. I looked over in the direction of the sound, but was frightened and turned pale. A pair of pale, bloodless hands in the cupboard drooped softly. On the fingers of these hands, there was a black mole that I was very familiar with. This was my mother's hand. My eyes were red, and my whole body was trembling. I walked to the side of the cupboard step by step. These hands had no temperature, and even turned blue. It was obvious that they were not the hands of a living person. My mother was not missing, but was murdered. This man and woman killed my mother and hid here. At this moment, my first reaction was to run. When I turned my head, I saw the man walking towards me with a smile. His sight first fell on the hand outside the cupboard, and then he looked at me fiercely. "Mo, what are you doing here? Why are your eyes so red? It looks like you are crying." The man's voice was very concerned. But I clearly saw him pick up a sharp fruit knife from the knife rack on the side. The man walked towards me with a fruit knife. Suddenly, he raised the fruit knife and stabbed it towards my eyes. The tip of the knife stopped at 1 centimeter from my eyes. At this moment, I burst into a strong desire to survive. There was only one thought in my mind: I can't be seen. Seeing that my eyes did not blink, as if I didn't see the fruit knife in front of me, the man slowly put down the knife. "I heard from your mother that Ji Yan was coming over, and Dad came to make his favorite braised pork." The man smiled and put down the knife, and then I saw him open the cupboard, and my mother's head was exposed. The bulging eyeballs looked straight at me, and I almost screamed, but I still pretended not to see it and smiled at the man. But the next scene made me more frightened and angry. I saw the man open the cupboard, and my mother's body rolled out. He picked up the body and threw it on the table like throwing an animal's body. Dad recently got a good black pig, and Ji Yan had a good meal tonight. I watched helplessly as the man gave me a malicious smile, then raised his kitchen knife and chopped it down. My stomach was churning, and at the same time I was overwhelmed with sadness and despair. I wanted to leave, but the man stopped me. "Momo, help Dad. This meat is a little hard to cut, you help Dad hold it. This man is so vicious. Or he wants to test my reaction. I can never watch the man dismember my mother without expression." I adjusted my breathing and said with a smile, "Dad, I'm a little tired and want to go back to rest." The man also smiled and said, "Then you go to rest, Dad will handle it here." After returning to the room, I couldn't control my emotions anymore and burst into tears. My beloved mother died, and I watched her disintegrate with my own eyes, and it is very likely that my father was also killed. I took a deep breath and called the police. I told the police about my experience and told them the address of the villa. The police asked me to lock the door and stay inside, and told me that they would be here within half an hour. After hanging up the phone, I immediately locked the door. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was Ji Yan. "Momo, are you okay?" Hearing Ji Yan's voice, I was completely broken. "I'm fine, but I saw my mother's body." Ji Yan was silent for a moment. "Momo, you have to cheer up. I know you are very sad now, but now, the most important thing is to ensure your personal safety. Ji Yan is right, now is not the time to be sad. There is still half an hour before the police arrive here. In this half an hour I must ensure my own safety." Suddenly, I heard footsteps coming upstairs, and the man's voice sounded from behind the door. "Momo, Dad has made braised pork, come down to help Dad taste it?" I was very angry when I heard the man's words, and I stared at the door tightly. "Dad, I don't want to eat now." Then the woman's voice also sounded outside the door. "Momo, come out, Mom will help you massage your eyes. The doctor said that more massage is needed to speed up blood circulation." "Mom, I want to be alone for a while," I said nervously. At this time, the sound of the key being inserted into the lock sounded, and the woman actually matched the key to my room. As the door handle turned, I immediately hid under the bed. Someone actually wrote lines of words on the bottom of the bed with a black pen. But before I could take a closer look, I heard a creak and the door opened. "Momo, where are you?" You are so old, are you still playing hide-and-seek with your parents? The woman's voice sounded particularly strange. I covered my mouth and held my breath, not daring to make a sound. The door of the closet was opened, and the door of the bathroom was also opened. I shrank myself in the corner, praying desperately that they would not find me, but my prayer did not work, and two expressionless faces appeared under the bed. They all showed me a weird smile. I found you, Momo. I tried hard to hold back the scream that was about to burst out of my throat. Mom, do you remember playing hide-and-seek together when we were young? I missed the time at that time a little, so I played hide-and-seek with you. I smiled and groped my way out. The woman looked at me and suddenly sighed. You kid, that time when I was a child, I still remember you hiding in the pigsty, and you were dirty when I found you. Her words shocked me. This is indeed what I experienced when I was a child. How did the woman know? After my mother found me from the pigsty, I had a fever for a day and a night. It was my mother who carried me to the town hospital for treatment. The woman smiled, with a nostalgic look in her eyes. After that, you had a fever. At that time, our family was poor and had no car, and your father happened to be on a business trip, so I carried you to the town hospital. You vomited all over my back. My nails were deeply embedded in the palm of my hand. She actually said these very detailed things word for word. Seeing that I was silent, the woman came over and touched my head and said, Momo, Ji Yan really went too far this time. Mom was kind to him for your sake, but Mom and Dad both hope that you and Ji Yan will divorce. How can our Momo, who is so good-tempered, be matched with a bad guy like Ji Yan? I looked at the woman in shock. Ji Yan? What happened to Ji Yan? I saw the woman and the man look at each other, and the woman said tentatively, Momo, have you forgotten what happened before the car accident? You went to the airport to look for Ji Yan, and saw Ji Yan and a stewardess walking out hugging each other. You ran out in a rage, and then got into a car accident. After waking up, you became very strange. It seemed that you had no memory of Ji Yan at all. We were afraid of upsetting you, so we didn't dare to mention it, and pretended that we didn't know. I sat on the bed limply, and it turned out that this was the reason for my car accident. No, I can't believe what they said. They are clearly the murderers of my parents. I decided not to pretend anymore, and said coldly, you are not my parents, I saw it all. The woman showed great surprise on her face, rushed forward and held my face. Can you see it? Great, daughter, Mom is really happy. I pushed her away. Don't pretend that you are my mother anymore. My mother has been killed by you, and her body has been made into braised pork by you. The man looked at me blankly. Mo, what are you talking about? Your mother is here, what body? You still have to pretend? I rushed downstairs and came to the kitchen, but the kitchen was clean, there was no blood, and there was no body of my mother on the ground, but a huge pig head. The man said helplessly, this pig was just transported from the countryside by my father yesterday, in order to replenish your body. I opened all the cabinets in the kitchen like crazy, but my mother's body disappeared. The woman suddenly cried loudly. The doctor reminded us before that you might have some sequelae of the car accident. But we didn't take it seriously. What's wrong with you now? Mom and Dad are here. I turned my head and stared at the two strange faces. What evidence do you have to prove that you are my parents? The woman wiped her eyes and took out her phone tremblingly. I noticed that there was a black mole on her finger that was exactly the same as my mother's. The woman showed me the photos on her phone. In the phone, I was snuggling with them and smiling very sweetly. The date shown on the photo was exactly 3 months ago, when I was not blind. I turned pale and retreated step by step. I couldn't believe what I saw. The man's veins were bulging with anger. It's all Ji Yan. If it weren't for him, my daughter would not be like this now. I stared at them blankly. Am I really sick? They are my real parents, but I had hallucinations because of my illness and mistakenly thought they were not my parents. Mom and Dad, I need to go back to the room to calm down. I couldn't wait to know the truth, and this time they didn't stop me. The man nodded with a heavy face. I walked upstairs in a daze. If what they said was true, and I was the one who was sick, then what about the tissue under the bed? I stood upstairs and saw them sitting on the sofa, looking worried. I took a photo of their faces and sent it to Ji Yan. Ji Yan quickly replied to me, "Momo, aren't my parents fine? They are really my parents." It turns out that all this is true, and I am the one who is sick. I returned to the room in a daze. "Ji Yan, you cheated, right?" Ji Yan was silent for a moment. "Momo, you did see some things that made you misunderstand. But please believe me, I really didn't cheat. I don't really care whether Ji Yan cheated or not. Even if I was really sick, there are still many doubts here. First, where is Ji Yan now? From the photos he sent me, he is indeed in a villa with the same layout as here. Second, who wrote the tissue under the bed? All kinds of doubts lingered in my mind. I remembered the words I found under the bed before, but I didn't have time to read them clearly, so I quickly crawled under the bed. By MO, I left that tissue. I am you in the last cycle, and you are now repeating the same thing. This is your 5th cycle. Although it sounds incredible, the 2 people below are not your parents. Don't believe anything they say, and don't believe Ji Yan. Don't believe what he said about the existence of another identical villa. Use your brain to think about it. The photos he provided you can be done through PS. At the end of each cycle, you will lose the memory of the previous cycle. But you are lucky in the 4th time, you retained your memory. These words are for you who are now experiencing the 5th cycle. Don't believe the words of the police, they will not help you. You will die at 8 o'clock in the evening and enter the 6th cycle unless you kill them before that. Maybe you don't believe what I say, but Ji Yan will do everything he can to stop you from killing them, and he will make up all kinds of lies. "Momo, are you still listening to the phone?" Ji Yan asked. I calmed down and said, "Ji Yan, I want to kill them." "No, Momo. You can't kill them, you can't do it." I hung up the phone directly, opened the door quietly, and saw them standing in the kitchen, eating the plate of braised pork with relish. My heart was beating very fast. I felt that she didn't seem to trust us very much, so it was better to kill her. Why do I feel that she seems to have come out? Suddenly, the man raised his head and looked in my direction. I shrank back suddenly, my chest rose and fell violently, and I heard footsteps coming upstairs. "Momo, where are you, my good daughter?" I hid in the closet, holding a carving knife in my hand, and my palms were soaked with cold sweat. It seemed that there was a heavy rain outside the window, and a huge thunder sounded. I saw a pair of eyes close together in the gap. "Found you." I was dragged out by the man, and the woman grabbed my shoulders tightly. "Momo, why don't you believe us? You are sick, you are very sick. Mom and Dad are going to take you to the hospital." My heart was pounding, and I bit the woman's hand with all my strength. The woman retracted her hand in pain. I raised the carving knife and stabbed the woman's arm. "Momo." Ji Yan stood behind me panting, and I turned my head to see his pale face. "By Mo, what are you doing? They are your parents, and you are sick." Ji Yan took out a report and threw it at me fiercely. I picked up the report, which contained my mental evaluation certificate. The report said that my mental state was extremely unstable, accompanied by symptoms such as delusion and hallucination. "Momo, listen to my explanation, I did not cheat." At that time, the colleague fell down, and I helped her up. "You have always been very sensitive and suspicious, and you are very strict with me. These are not important, but I didn't expect that you would not even listen to my explanation and ran out, which led to the car accident. Momo, your parents have worked hard to take care of you, put down the carving knife." Ji Yan looked at me solemnly, and the woman also looked at me with tears, ignoring the pain of her wounds, looking at me with a sad face. At this time, that sentence appeared in my mind again. "Ji Yan will make up all kinds of lies to stop you." Many scenes appeared in front of my eyes in an instant. My mother carried me to the hospital in the town, but I accidentally vomited all over her. My father smiled honestly and took out a little orange cat that I had been thinking about from behind. The day I was admitted to a key high school, my father, who had never cooked before, clumsily cooked a table of delicious dishes for me. Their faces appeared in front of me, gentle and kind. They have the best qualities of being a parent. But their faces are definitely not the faces of the man and woman in front of me. No matter what my parents look like, they will not make me feel terrible and weird. I made up my mind, and under Ji Yan's shocked eyes, I cut the throats of the man and woman. I thought they would resist, but unexpectedly they didn't. Their eyes were full of hatred and a flash of fear. At this moment, everything in front of me was formatted and broken into many small pieces. I saw Ji Yan standing there, looking at me motionlessly with complicated eyes. "You did it, Mo." My voice came out of his mouth, and finally, Ji Yan disappeared. My parents, real parents, appeared in front of me. They held hands and looked at me with a smile. Mo, you did it." Tears couldn't help but flow from my eyes, and finally they turned into small pieces and disappeared in front of me. "Dr. G, Mo has woken up." Ji Yan took off his glasses and smiled. "She has successfully defeated herself in the 5th hypnosis. How is she feeling now?" "She has been crying. I think she is not used to it yet. Let her calm down. Let's sort out the recovery process of Mo's illness." Mo, female, 26 years old, sensitive and cowardly, a typical people-pleasing personality. Half a year ago, Mo went on vacation to a villa in the suburbs with her parents. It was at that time that Mo encountered the nightmare of his life. Li Daqiang and Wang Suilan, a couple who committed all kinds of evil, were wanted criminals by the police. During their escape, they saw a nice car parked at the door of the villa and thought of robbing it. Li Daqiang and Wang Suilan pried open the lock of the villa and entered it. It was late at night, and Mo and his parents were all asleep. Li Daqiang and his wife wanted to rob some money and leave, but unexpectedly, Mo's mother suddenly came out to go to the toilet. They brutally killed Mo's mother, and Mo's father was awakened by the screams. He was very smart and immediately realized that his wife had an accident. He ran to Mo's room while the criminals were not paying attention. He woke Mo up and asked Mo to hide under the bed. Li Daqiang and Wang Suilan soon found Mo's father. Mo hid under the bed and watched his father's throat being cut. Before Mo's father died, he made a mouth shape to Mo, "Don't be afraid." After Ji Yan narrated Mo's experience, he pushed his glasses. After that, Mo suffered from survivor syndrome. She felt extremely guilty and resented why she didn't run out to help her father. Because of her own cowardly and inferior character, Mo has been living in pain. She even began to have complications such as hallucinations, and Mo imagined that her parents were still alive. But according to her description, she saw the faces of Li Daqiang and Wang Suilan. In order to treat her condition, I hypnotized her. Mo regarded me as her husband and constructed my identity in her mind. I am her backbone and her subconscious instinct. When she saw her father being killed, her instinct as a human being was fear and terror. So Ji Yan would do everything he could to stop her from taking that brave step. My identity inside symbolizes Mo's cowardly instinct to stop her. But she eventually overcame this fear and she was forgiven by herself. An intern asked curiously, "Dr. G, what's the matter with the identical villa mentioned by the patient?" "That villa is the villa where Mo experienced the murder of her parents in reality, and she constructed another villa in her heart that bound herself." After Ji Yan finished his explanation, he came to the room to visit Mo. Mo burst into tears, but Ji Yan knew that she had come out of it. Perhaps the greatest pain of a person is that he cannot even forgive herself. The end.
It is said that people over 100 years old will become evil ghosts that eat people. On my great-grandmother's 100th birthday, my yard was crowded with people. Grandpa boiled 10 eggs. He put the eggs in front of my great-grandmother and whispered, "Mom, if you can peel one of these 10 eggs, you can stay at home." I heard from the villagers that evil ghosts cannot see eggs, only people can see them. My great-grandmother frowned and said aggrievedly, "Queasy, my mother's hands are shaking and it is difficult for her to hold chopsticks normally. Why do you still let me peel eggs?" My great-grandmother is not in good health. When she was young, her hands were injured and she often trembled. Grandpa continued, "Mom, everyone in the village is watching. If you can't peel the eggs, you can't stay at home. Grandmother said pitifully, your father died early, and I raised 4 of you brothers by myself. How can I peel eggs with my shaking hands? When my great-grandmother said this, her hands had already started to tremble. Grandpa frowned and didn't speak for a long time. Seeing that my grandfather didn't speak, my grandmother continued to speak. Mom, let me say something unpleasant. Before the new year, Mrs. Zhao also refused to peel eggs. Her son insisted on keeping Mrs. Zhao at home, and as a result, 7 people died in the family, and the family was almost extinct. As soon as my grandmother finished speaking, my great-grandmother's face changed. She looked at my grandmother with a fierce look, as if she was about to get angry. Seeing that my great-grandmother didn't speak, my grandmother said again, Mom, you refuse to peel eggs, haven't you become an evil ghost? As soon as my grandmother finished speaking, the people watching the excitement in the village were all stunned and stared at my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother narrowed her eyes and muttered in a low voice, I peel eggs. My great-grandmother's hands were still shaking, and they were shaking very badly. She couldn't hold the egg steadily after trying several times. In the end, it was my grandfather who stuffed the egg into my great-grandmother's hand. My great-grandmother held the egg and turned her eyes back and forth twice, and suddenly the lights in the house went out. Everyone was stunned. When the lights were turned on, Grandma had already peeled the eggs. Grandpa was relieved after seeing Grandma peel the eggs. Grandpa said to the villagers, let's go. The villagers left one after another, and only the family members were left in the yard. Grandpa smiled and said that Mom had peeled the eggs, and we had to celebrate Mom's 100th birthday. My third grandfather also smiled and said, Mom, you are so lucky, I will celebrate your 100th birthday. My grandma grinned and stared at the people in the room. She glanced around and then smiled and said, I am lucky, I am lucky, I am more lucky than your father. Grandpa said, let's kill pigs and sheep now, and have a big celebration for 3 days. You little kids will stay in the house with Grandma. After saying this, Grandpa went to the yard to catch pigs. Only a few of us children and Grandma were left in the house. My grandma stared at us with a smile. She waved to the youngest Yuanbao, and Yuanbao ran to Grandma. Grandma held Yuanbao in her arms and sniffed him. My grandma asked, how old is Yuanbao? Yuanbao replied softly, 4 years old. My grandma also reached out and touched Yuanbao's face. She smiled and said, Yuanbao smells so good. When my grandma said this, I saw her teeth became sharper and seemed to be longer. My grandma seemed to notice that I was looking at her. She turned her head to look at me and waved at me, Yuanfu, come here too. My grandma was very thin and her face was very bad. I always felt that she was glowing yellow and lifeless. I don't know why, but I was a little scared. My grandma saw that I was standing still, and she was visibly unhappy. Yuanfu, come here. I walked to my grandma with my hands and feet pinched. My grandma pulled me into her arms with all her strength. She also pinched the flesh on my back and said, Yuanfu is fatter than Yuanbao. My grandma laughed after saying this. My grandma let go of me and Yuanbao and waved to Xiying and Ziyue again. The 2 of them were older, but only 7 or 8 years old. My grandmother said, Xiying, Ziyue, come here for a hug. Xiying came to my grandmother, and my grandmother touched Xiying's face and said dissatisfiedly, too thin, all bones. My grandmother looked at Ziyue again and said, Ziyue, come here. Ziyue stood there without moving, and said, I won't go, you're a man-eating evil ghost. As soon as Ziyue finished speaking, my grandmother's face changed, and she said with a gloomy face, Stinky girl, what did you say? Do you believe me or not, I will hit you in the face? Ziyue said, I saw it all just now, the egg was not peeled by you, but by my great-grandfather. He stuffed the peeled egg into your hand. My grandmother said with a hard face, nonsense, I will beat you to death. Ziyue said seriously, I am not talking nonsense. My grandmother's eyes turned back and forth twice, and she took out 2 candy balls from her pocket, and we children all stared at her. The sugar balls are very sweet and can only be eaten during the Chinese New Year. My grandmother narrowed her eyes and said, Ziyue, come here, I'll give you a sugar ball. Ziyue was stunned for a few seconds, and she stared at the sugar ball eagerly. My grandmother said softly, come here, come to my grandmother. My grandmother smiled and spoke softly. Ziyue came to my grandmother. My grandmother stuffed all the sugar balls into Ziyue's mouth and asked, "Is it sweet?" Ziyue nodded and said, "Sweet." My grandmother smiled, "Ziyue, you saw it wrong just now. The egg was peeled by grandmother. If grandmother is really a man-eating evil ghost, how can she give you sugar balls to eat?" Ziyue hesitated for a few seconds and didn't say anything. Among the children, only Ziyue got the sugar ball, and we could only watch eagerly. Grandma said, "Don't watch, I only have 2 sugar balls, go out and play." My grandmother drove us out, but she pulled Ziyue's hand and asked her to stay. We went to the yard to play, and Xiuying was unhappy. She said, "Grandma must have secretly given Ziyue something delicious if she kept Ziyue." I nodded to agree. There are many children in the family, but they eat little. Some can eat, while others can't. We have long been used to it. When it was night, 3 tables were set up in my yard. Everyone in the family sat at the table to eat, except Aunt San. She shouted for Ziyue, but no one responded. Aunt San was Ziyue's mother. She asked us children if we had seen Ziyue. Xiuying said Ziyue was in the west room just now. As soon as Xiuying finished speaking, Aunt San looked at my grandmother and asked, "Grandma, where's Ziyue?" Grandma said, "I don't know, go to the toilet and see. She said she went to the toilet just now." Aunt San hurried to the toilet, looked inside carefully and said, "No." My grandmother frowned and said, "Then I don't know." Aunt San was stunned for a few seconds and almost fell to the ground. She shouted for Ziyue, but no one responded. Grandpa asked us all to help look for her. We searched inside and outside my yard, but we couldn't see Ziyue. Aunt San was so anxious that she stamped her feet, tears welled up in her eyes. "Where was Ziyue?" Grandpa said to Grandma, "Mom, you take the kids to eat first. We will go find Ziyue first." After saying this, Grandpa walked out of the yard, calling Ziyue as he walked. People in the yard also went to find Ziyue, leaving only a few of us at home. There was pork and fish on the table, very rich, and we children sat on the stools and ate with big mouthfuls. My grandma seemed to have no appetite. She sat on the stool and didn't eat the vegetables. I asked, "Grandma, why don't you eat?" My grandma laughed and said, "I'm not hungry yet, you guys eat more." After saying this, Grandma went into the warehouse. There was a bloody smell in the warehouse, and a basin of pig blood was in the warehouse. My grandma went into the warehouse for a long time before coming out. When she came out, I saw blood on the corner of her clothes, but the blood was not very obvious. My grandma smiled and said, "Go to bed early after eating." After saying this, Grandma went into the house. We kids wolfed down our food and were soon full. We kids went into the house, and Grandma had already spread out the bedding. Seeing us go in, Grandma smiled and said, "Let's go to bed on the king." We kids went to the king, and then Grandma turned off the light, and I closed my eyes and went to sleep. Late at night, I heard a crunch sound. Someone was eating, but who would eat so late? I opened my eyes and saw Yuan Bao and Xiuying were both sleeping. Only my grandma was lying on her side with her back to me, and the sound came from her. "Grandma, what are you eating?" My grandma's back was obviously stiff, and she said with her back to me, "I'm hungry, eating carrots." "Grandma, you have bad teeth, why are you eating carrots?" As soon as I finished speaking, Grandma turned her head to look at me. She looked at me with a strange and sinister look, as if she would strangle me to death if I asked one more question. Grandma told me to go to bed quickly, so I had to close my eyes and continue to sleep. But I could still hear the crunch sound. The sound lasted for a long time and disappeared when it was almost dawn. The next morning, everyone in the family came back. They had been looking for Ziyue all night but couldn't find her. Third aunt collapsed on the ground and cried loudly. Everyone in the family advised Third aunt to relax. Third aunt cried and said, "Ziyue never ran around and was very obedient. Why did she disappear after coming out of the west room?" When Third aunt said this, her eyes were fixed on my grandmother. Grandma frowned and asked, "Shanzi's wife, what do you mean by this?" Third aunt cried and said, "I just asked Xiuying, and Xiuying said that you and Ziyue were quarreling in the room. Ziyue said that you are a man-eating evil ghost, and that the eggs were packed for you by your uncle, and then you gave Ziyue candy and left Ziyue alone in the room. Ziyue was killed by you." The uncle in Third aunt's mouth was my grandfather. My grandfather was stunned for a few seconds and said, "Shanzi's wife, Don't talk nonsense. I didn't peel the eggs. Aunt San sneered and said, when Grandma was about to peel the eggs, the light went out, and when the light came on, Grandma had already peeled the eggs. This is strange. I just want to know where my Zue is. My grandmother narrowed her eyes and said, you can't believe what children say. Children will lie. I peeled the egg. As soon as my grandmother finished speaking, my third aunt took an egg from the warehouse and said, you peel this egg. As long as you peel the egg, I will believe that you are not an evil ghost. As soon as my third aunt finished speaking, my third uncle rushed up. He kicked my third aunt down with one foot, and cursed loudly, what kind of person are you? How dare you be the overlord when Shanzi is not at home? Go home. My third uncle is my third aunt's father-in-law. My third uncle has been working in the city for a long time and has not come back. Moreover, my third uncle and my grandfather look very similar, and you can't tell them apart if you don't look carefully. My third aunt cried and said, Yue is gone, and I don't want to live anymore. If you don't peel the egg in front of me today, I will recognize that you are an evil ghost and give me Yue's life. My third aunt cried and made a fuss, and my third uncle wanted to hit my third aunt, but was stopped by my grandfather. Grandpa said, Yue is missing, and it is natural for a mother to be anxious. After saying this, Grandpa looked at my grandmother. Mother, Shanzi's wife doesn't believe you. Just peel the egg again and don't let her make a fuss. My grandmother glanced at my third uncle, and my third uncle's eyes turned back and forth twice. He said unhappily, Yue is my granddaughter, and I am more anxious than anyone else when she is missing. But you can't blame your mother for being anxious. This is not a matter of wrapping an egg. You all don't believe in your mother and treat her as an evil ghost. As soon as my third uncle finished speaking, my grandmother's eyes turned red. She cried and said, I want to be an evil ghost. If I become an evil ghost, you can beat me to death and I won't be an eyesore anymore. I am just a burden. My grandmother cried in the yard, crying sadly, and everyone in the yard looked at each other. A young wife advised my third aunt, Shanzi's wife, you must have thought too much. Let's go to the village to look for her again? Maybe Yue is still in the village. My third aunt cried and said, Yue is very obedient and it is impossible for her to run around. She must have killed her. My third aunt pointed at my great-grandmother with resentment in her eyes. If you don't peel this egg today, this matter will not end. My third uncle shouted at my third aunt, what do you want to do? If you dare to make trouble again, get out of my house. I don't want you as my daughter-in-law. Grandpa persuaded, Lao San, what are you doing? What you said is too ugly. Why am I saying something ugly? A granddaughter-in-law dared to rebel against the sky and bully my mother. She really spoiled her. My third aunt's eyes were red. She pointed at my third uncle and cursed, Yue is your granddaughter. You don't care at all. Are you still a human being? As soon as my third aunt finished speaking, my third uncle wanted to beat my third aunt again. My great-grandmother frowned and said, okay, stop arguing, bring me the eggs. My third uncle widened his eyes. Mother, are you crazy? My third aunt hurriedly handed the egg to my great-grandmother. People in the yard gathered around and stared at my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother easily peeled the egg and put the peeled egg in my third aunt's hand. Shanzi's wife, do you believe it this time? My third aunt was stunned for a few seconds, and tears still couldn't stop falling. Grandma said, I am old and don't want to celebrate my 100th birthday. You all go, let a few children accompany me, I think it's too noisy when there are too many people. When my great-grandmother said this, she kept staring at us children with the corner of her eyes. My great-grandmother's eyes made me feel creepy. My third uncle said, since you are upset, let's go back to our own homes, don't disturb you, and let a few children accompany you well. Grandma nodded and said, let's go. My third aunt was still crying. Where did Yue go? Everyone in the courtyard comforted my third aunt, asking her to go home first. Maybe Yue had already gone home. My third aunt walked out of the courtyard with red eyes. Everyone in the courtyard left, leaving only the few people in our family, Yuanbao and Xuying. My grandmother smiled and said, you three will sleep with me in the west room tonight. Grandma frowned and said, Mom, Yuanfu should live in the east room. The Kang in the west room is too small. Anyway, you will live in my house for retirement and you can see Yuanfu every day, so let Yuanbao and Xuying stay with you for a few days. The smile on my great-grandmother's face froze. She hesitated for a few seconds before nodding. After saying this, My great-grandmother led Yuanbao and Xiuying into the west room. My grandmother led me into the east room. Grandpa was sitting on the earthen king in the east room smoking a cigarette. I didn't know what he was thinking about, and his eyes were empty. Grandma asked, "Old man, what are you thinking about?" Grandpa sighed and said, "How could Ziyue be lost? Where did this child go?" Grandma said, "Most likely she was eaten by hungry ghosts." As soon as my grandmother finished speaking, my grandfather changed his face and said, "What are you talking about? Mother peeled the eggs in front of you. Why do you still doubt Mother?" Grandma frowned and said, "Ziyue is obedient and a sensible child. It's impossible for her to run around. If you ask me, she is in Mother's room. If you don't believe it, let's go to the window tonight to see if Mother is an evil ghost." Grandpa sighed and said helplessly, "You are always so suspicious. Even if Mother is not an evil ghost, you will say she is an evil ghost." My grandma curled her lips and said, "There is a strong smell of blood on Mother. I went to the warehouse just now and took a look. The pot of pig blood was gone." I also asked Xiuying, and Xiuying said that only Mother had entered the warehouse. This pot of pig blood was probably drunk by Mother. Grandpa glared at my grandma and said, "Nonsense. I'll go to the warehouse to see." Grandpa was about to get off the earthen king when my grandma stopped him. "I also suspect this, but don't alarm the snake. Let's go to the window late at night. If Mother is an evil ghost, she will definitely attack Yuanbao and Xiuying. Let's go and see at night." As soon as my grandma finished speaking, I saw a shadow passing under the window. I looked carefully again, but I didn't find anything. Did I see it wrong just now? Just when I was confused, my grandma said, "Evil ghosts eat people and drink blood. The fate of old Zhao is likely to be the fate of my mother. I think we should invite a Taoist priest in advance." Grandpa frowned and said, "Yuanbao and Xiuying are both my mother's flesh and blood, and nothing can happen to them." My grandma curled her lips and was too lazy to quarrel with my grandpa. When my grandpa opened the door carefully late at night, he and my grandma went to lean on the window. I wanted to go, but my grandpa wouldn't let me. I had to lean on the window and look out, and soon my grandpa and grandma came back. My grandpa was very happy and said with a smile on his face, "Did you see it? Mother, Yuanbao and Xiuying are all sleeping. How can there be the evil ghost you said?" My grandma frowned and said, "It shouldn't be. Am I thinking too much?" "That's what you think too much," my grandpa replied. The next morning, Yuanbao and Xiuying came out of the west room, and they were alive and kicking and nothing happened. Grandpa said to Grandma, "Mother, Ziyue has not been found yet. Yuanfu and his grandmother will go out to look for it. There is rice in the pot. You can eat first." Grandma said, "Okay, go slowly on the way." My grandmother came to me and whispered, "Yuanfu, stay away from your grandma, don't listen to your grandma." I nodded to show that I understood. After my grandmother gave her instructions, I followed my grandfather out. We kids were playing in the yard, and my grandma was sitting under the wall to bask in the sun. Her eyes stared at us from time to time, and Xiuying suddenly said, "I don't want to live in Grandma's house anymore." I asked her, "What's wrong?" She said, "There are mice in Grandma's house, and they bit my fingers." Xiuying raised her left hand, and her little finger was really bitten. Yuanbao also said, "I don't want to live in Grandma's house anymore." Xiuying asked, "Were you bitten by mice too?" Yuanbao shook his head and said, "I heard Grandma talking in her sleep. She said she wanted to eat me. I was a little scared and I wanted to go home." Xiuying said, "I want to go home too." As soon as Xiuying finished speaking, I saw my grandmother stand up from the stool. She called me, "Yuanfu, boil some hot water. I will kill a chicken for you guys." We were all stunned and widened our eyes. There are only 3 chickens in my yard, all of which are kept for laying eggs. I hurriedly said, "Grandma, can the laying chickens be killed?" The last time I ate chicken was during the Chinese New Year, and I haven't eaten chicken for a long time. My grandmother said, "Yes. Let me catch the chicken quickly." I was a little hesitant and stood still. My grandmother said to Xiuying again, "Xiuying, go catch the chicken." Xiuying glanced at me and whispered, "Can you catch it?" Seeing that Xiuying didn't move, my grandmother stomped her feet in anger. My grandmother went straight into the chicken coop and caught a hen. My grandmother went into the warehouse again, cut off the hen's head with a knife, turned around and said to me, "Yuanfu, boil some hot water quickly." The hen was already dead, so I had to run to the warehouse to boil hot water. My grandmother carried the dead chicken into the barn and said as she walked, "We don't have enough branches at home. You and Xiuying go to the mountain to pick up branches." I nodded. Xiuying and I went to the mountain to pick up branches, and then we went home. But as soon as I entered the yard, my grandmother widened her eyes and asked, "Where is Yuanbao? Why didn't he come back with you?" I was stunned for a few seconds and said, "Yuanbao is at home. Only Xiuying and I went to the mountain to pick up branches." Grandma shook her head desperately. No, Yuanbao went with you." Xiuying said loudly, "No, Yuanbao didn't follow us." Grandma retorted, "I have been in a warehouse and didn't see Yuanbao at all. Yuanbao must have gone up the mountain with you. Go to the mountain to find him." I said affirmatively, "Impossible, although Yuanbao is small, he is very smart. If he followed us, he would definitely call us. Yuanbao must not have gone up the mountain." As soon as I finished speaking, my grandmother's face changed. She said with a gloomy face that if Yuanbao didn't go up the mountain, then where did he go? "I think Yuanbao was lost by you. You didn't want Yuanbao to eat chicken, so you lost Yuanbao, right?" Xiuying hurriedly explained, "No, we didn't see Yuanbao." My grandmother asked with a gloomy face, "Where is Yuanbao?" "You too lost Yuanbao. What will you do when the adults come back? Why don't you go find Yuanbao quickly?" My grandmother went into the barn after saying this. The hen she killed was still lying on the ground with blood, and the feathers on her body had not been plucked. Xiuying cried and said, "Yuanfu, what should we do?" "Yuanbao is lost." I said firmly, "Yuanbao was not lost by us. Yuanbao is smart. If he followed us, he would definitely call us." As soon as I finished speaking, I heard a faint cry from the west room. This cry was not only heard by me, but also by Xiuying. It was Yuanbao. Xiuying and I hurried into the west room and shouted Yuanbao in the west room. I heard a faint cry again. The sound seemed to come from the cabinet. This cabinet was very large and was my grandmother's dowry. I got close to the cabinet and put my ear to it. I heard a faint cry inside. Yuanbao was in the cabinet. Xiuying and I took great effort to open the cabinet a crack. The moment the cabinet was opened, I smelled a strong smell of blood. I moved the cabinet a little further and called Yuanbao's name into the cabinet. Yuanbao cried a little louder. Xiuying and I used all our strength to open the cabinet. The scene inside the cabinet scared Xiuying and me. We both collapsed on the earth and Kang and couldn't even shout. Our hands and feet were weak and our bodies were covered with sweat. Yuanbao was lying in the cabinet. His ears were gone and all 10 fingers were gone. I also saw Ziyue's clothes in the cabinet. Ziyue's clothes were covered with blood. Xiuying's hands were also shaking. She whispered, "It's an evil ghost." I took a deep breath and pulled Yuanbao out of the cabinet. Yuanbao was covered in blood and was very weak. There were bite marks all over his body, which was shocking. "Yuanbao, what's going on?" As soon as I finished speaking, Yuanbao's eyes widened. I followed Yuanbao's line of sight and saw my grandmother standing at the door. I don't know when she appeared, and whether she heard what we said. My grandmother asked expressionlessly, "What happened to Yuanbao? Why is he covered in blood?" When my grandmother said this, I saw that her teeth had grown a lot longer. As soon as the grandmother finished speaking, Xiuying jumped out of the window. She ran and shouted, evil ghost who eats people. Someone come quickly, Tilda." My grandmother seemed not to hear Xiuying's words. She walked to me slowly and said with a smile, "Yuanfu, be obedient, put Yuanbao in the cabinet." My grandmother smelled bad, like a pig that died of plague. It was very smelly. Yuanbao fainted, and I held Yuanbao tightly and didn't let go. Seeing that I didn't let go, my grandmother was anxious, and she widened her eyes and showed a ferocious expression. She grabbed Yuanbao's arm with one hand and snatched Yuanbao from my arms. The other hand pinched my neck and lifted me up. Just when I felt that I was going to die, I heard my grandfather's voice from the yard, "Mom, we are back." When my grandmother heard my grandfather's voice, she chuckled. Grandpa walked to the window and looked into the house. He was stunned. My grandmother's hair was completely white, her eyes were bloodshot, and she looked like a ghost. Seeing that my grandmother was about to strangle me to death, my grandfather rushed into the house. He hugged my grandmother tightly from behind, and then shouted to me, "Yuanfu, run, go find your grandmother, go find Taoist Chen." My grandmother's hand suddenly loosened, and I jumped out of the window when I had the chance. I ran and shouted, "Help, help. My grandmother has turned into an evil ghost." I ran to the entrance of the village and saw my grandma. My grandma asked, "Yuan Fu, what happened?" I cried and said, "Grandma has turned into an evil ghost." My grandpa asked you to find Taoist Chen. My grandma's eyes widened instantly. She picked me up and ran towards the west end of the village. I don't know how long it took to run to Taoist Chen's house. Taoist Chen was sitting on a stool basking in the sun. My grandma said anxiously, "Taoist Chen, something bad has happened. My old lady has turned into an evil ghost." Taoist Chen frowned and asked, "How many people are there in your yard?" My grandma looked at me, and I said, "There are only my grandpa and my grandma in the yard." Hearing me say this, Taoist Chen's eyebrows relaxed. "Fortunately, there are only 2 people. If there are more people, it will be difficult to deal with. This ghost will possess. Let's go." Several of us hurriedly ran back to my house. My grandma was dumbfounded as soon as we entered the yard. There were several people standing in my yard. My second uncle, third uncle, my second uncle's son Dokwan, and daughter-in-law Hawa were all there. My grandma frowned and asked in a low voice, "Taoist Chen, what should we do?" Taoist Chen narrowed his eyes and said nothing. Grandma was tied up and pressed to the ground, and there was blood on the corners of her mouth. My third uncle said, "Taoist Chen, please think of a way quickly. What should we do? My mother has become an evil ghost." Taoist Chen said, "First lock the old lady in the warehouse, and you guys go to the back mountain to cut some peach branches." My grandfather asked Taoist Chen, "Do I still need to go?" My leg was bitten by my mother, and it hurts a lot. Grandpa's calf was bleeding and looked very embarrassed. Taoist Chen said, "Don't go yet, I have something to ask you." My grandfather nodded. My third uncle's eyes turned back and forth twice, and he and others went to the mountain to get peach branches. They left and there were only a few of us left in the backyard. Taoist Chen asked grandfather, "Did your mother only bite your leg after she became an evil ghost?" Grandpa frowned and replied, "She also bit my arm, but I dodged it." Taoist Chen asked again, "Why are there so many people in the house suddenly? Who called them?" Grandpa explained, "It was Xu Ying who called them. She called my brothers and others." Taoist Chen asked, "Which one is Xu Ying?" My grandfather replied, "Xu Ying didn't come. Xu Ying is the daughter of Dokwan's family. She is only 7 years old." Taoist Chen frowned and said nothing. At this time, Grandma asked Taoist Chen, "What's the matter?" Taoist Chen looked at my grandfather and said, "Get your mother out of the warehouse." Grandpa nodded and went into the warehouse. While my grandfather was in the warehouse, Taoist Chen took out 2 lucky bags from his pocket. He stuffed the lucky bag into my grandma's hand and whispered, "Take the lucky bag with you, so that the evil ghost can't possess you. Remember, no one in this courtyard can be trusted. It is very likely to be an evil ghost. I have to lead the evil ghost out." My grandma frowned and whispered, "How to lead it?" Taoist Chen whispered, "The evil ghost will eat people. He can't help it. Use people to lead it. I don't think your mother is an evil ghost, so I'll use her to lure her tonight." My grandfather got my great-grandmother out of the warehouse. My great-grandmother sat on the ground with a dull look, as if she had been greatly stimulated. Taoist Chen narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, a child's cry came from the west room. "Yuan Bao is still alive?" My grandmother hurriedly took Yuan Bao out of the west room. Yuan Bao shrank in my grandmother's arms, staring at Taoist Chen. My grandmother came to Taoist Chen and asked, "Taoist Chen, do you have any lucky bags?" Taoist Chen shook his head. "Lucky bags are rare, there are no extra ones." My grandmother frowned and said, "Poor Yuan Bao." As soon as my grandmother finished speaking, my third uncle and others came back with a lot of peach branches in their hands. Taoist Chen used peach branches to weave a large bamboo basket and put my great-grandmother in the bamboo basket. Taoist Chen said, "Hang the evil ghost on the locust tree for 3 days and 3 nights, and the evil ghost will die." As soon as Taoist Chen finished speaking, several people teamed up to hang my grandmother on a tree 5 or 6 meters high. My grandmother sat in a bamboo basket and cried loudly. She wanted to speak but couldn't make any sound. My third uncle asked, "Will Taoist Chen's method work?" "Don't worry, the evil ghost will die in 3 days." After Taoist Chen said this, he said to my grandmother, boil a few eggs and let everyone wrap them. My grandmother nodded and went to the warehouse to boil eggs. At night, my grandmother brought the eggs to the table. Everyone in the room was stunned when they saw the eggs, but no one spoke. Evil ghosts can't see eggs, only people can see them. My grandmother gave everyone an egg, and she smiled and said, "Everyone, eat it while it's hot." When my grandmother said this, her eyes were fixed on the people at the table. Everyone picked up the eggs and peeled them, but Yuanbao didn't take the eggs, and his fingers were gone. My grandma frowned. She put the peeled eggs into Yuanbao's bowl and said, "Yuanbao, eat it while it's hot." Yuanbao was stunned for a few seconds and asked, "What to eat?" As soon as Yuanbao finished speaking, everyone at the table looked at each other. My grandma said, "Eat what's in your bowl." Yuanbao looked at my grandma with a complicated look, and he smiled and said, "I don't want to eat eggs." When Yuanbao said this, he deliberately lowered his head to look at the bowl in front of him, but his bowl was obviously empty. Just now, my grandma had taken the eggs from his bowl. My grandma looked up at Taoist Chen, and Taoist Chen signaled my grandma not to make a sound. My grandma laughed dryly and said, "If you don't want to eat, don't eat." Yuanbao looked at the people at the dinner table coldly, and he said coldly, "Why are you all looking at me? You don't think I'm an evil ghost, do you?" Grandpa smiled and said, No, the evil ghost has been caught." Yuanbao snorted coldly, and his eyes moved slowly, revealing weirdness. "I'm going to sleep in the west room." After saying this, Yuanbao got off the earth and ran into the west room, and closed the door of the west room. Taoist Chen narrowed his eyes and said, "The evil ghost is in Yuanbao's body, and he is going to catch the ghost tonight." Everyone at the table stared with eyes wide open. My third uncle asked, "The evil ghost is in Yuanbao's body, so let my mother go quickly, the tree is windy." "We can't let her go yet, wait until midnight tonight. The evil ghost will definitely eat people and will definitely appear under the big tree. He will look up and jump up, then you will go around behind the evil ghost, tie the evil ghost with a rope, and I will kill the evil ghost with the talisman paper." Everyone at the table nodded in agreement. "Let's disperse, don't let the evil ghost get suspicious." Everyone at the table dispersed and went back to their own rooms. Taoist Chen said, "I will go back to get the talisman paper first, and I will definitely come back before midnight." Taoist Chen left after saying this. There were only 3 of us left in the room, and my grandfather sat on the king and sighed, "What a thing." My grandmother also sighed, "There is no way, we ran into it." As soon as my grandma finished speaking, my grandpa said, "Since the hungry ghosts are ingots, we should put my mother down. The wind on the tree is so strong that my mother will get sick from the cold." My grandma frowned and said, "Old man, listen to Taoist Chen. Let my mother endure it first and deceive the evil ghost first. I will send a quilt to my mother." After saying this, my grandpa picked up the quilt and was about to go out. My grandma hurriedly stopped my grandpa, "Don't go out." As soon as my grandma finished speaking, I saw my third uncle taking the quilt to the yard, and he threw the quilt to my great-grandma. My grandma said, "The third uncle has gone, so you don't have to go." My grandpa frowned and didn't go out. I lay on the windowsill and looked out. I seemed to see a black shadow following my third uncle, and the black shadow followed into the room where my third uncle lived. I rubbed my eyes, and my third uncle and the black shadow disappeared. At midnight, Taoist Chen had not returned yet. My grandma frowned and said, "Why hasn't Taoist Chen returned yet? Has he encountered any threat?" As soon as my grandma finished speaking, I heard the screams of my third uncle. He shouted, "Help! Hungry ghosts are going to eat people." I leaned on the window and looked outside, and saw my third uncle running out of the house in a hurry, with blood on his face. Third uncle knocked hard on my door. "Open the door quickly." My grandma and grandpa looked at each other and exchanged glances. My grandma asked, "Third, what does the evil ghost look like?" My third uncle said, "It was Yuanbao. Yuanbao is an evil ghost, and it ate everyone in the house." My grandfather frowned and said, "I saw the evil ghost with my own eyes. It was clearly a shadow. Whoever he possessed was an evil ghost. Third is lying." After saying this, my grandfather shouted outside the door, "Third, run." The door in the house couldn't be opened. My grandma whispered, "Is Third an evil ghost?" My grandfather nodded and said, "The third son wants to come into the house and eat us all." As soon as my grandfather finished speaking, my third uncle banged on the door outside the door. The banging sound was very loud, and my third uncle's voice became louder. He roared, "Open the door. If you don't open the door, I will eat you all." The wooden door of my house was banged, and my grandmother asked anxiously, "What should I do with the old man? He's about to come in." Grandpa frowned and said, "Climb up to the beam quickly and climb out from the roof. Hungry ghosts can't come up." Several of us stepped on the stool and climbed up to the beam with great effort. Grandpa poked a hole in the roof again, and several people climbed out through the hole. Grandpa was the last one to climb up, and the wooden door of my house was kicked open as soon as he climbed up. My third uncle entered the house viciously. He saw that there was no one in the house and saw the hole on the roof. He hurried to the yard and yelled at us, "Come down here, or I will climb up to the roof and eat you all." Grandpa frowned and said, "Climb up if you can, but I don't see how you can climb up without a ladder." As soon as Grandpa finished speaking, my grandma glared at him. "You are reminding him." Grandpa signaled my grandma not to speak. My third uncle smiled strangely, and he ran to the warehouse and took out a ladder from the warehouse. My third uncle put the ladder on the house, and he swallowed his saliva. Grandpa shouted, "Don't come over." My third uncle climbed towards the roof with his hands and feet. When he was about to climb to the top, my grandfather pushed the ladder away, and my third uncle fell to the ground. But my third uncle seemed to feel no pain, and put the ladder on the house and continued to climb up. When he was about to climb to the roof, my grandfather pushed the ladder away again. After repeating several times, my third uncle lay on the ground without moving. My grandmother asked, "Old man, did this evil ghost fall to death?" My grandfather frowned and said, "Let's wait until dawn." The next morning, several of us came down from the house and let my great-grandmother down from the tree. My third uncle was dead, and he fell to death. Yuanbao in the west room was also dead, leaving only a pool of blood. And my second uncle's family was left with only bloody clothes, which were all eaten by the evil ghost. Grandpa said anxiously, "We have to leave quickly." As soon as Grandpa finished speaking, I saw the gate of my house open and Taoist Chen entered the yard. My grandma asked, "Taoist Chen, why did you come just now?" Taoist Chen narrowed his eyes and said, "I was trapped by an evil ghost last night and couldn't get out." "What about the evil ghost?" "The evil ghost is dead." Taoist Chen laughed out loud, "It's better to be dead." At this time, my grandma suddenly said, "Taoist Chen, our family is moving away. I will return the things you gave me yesterday." Taoist Chen was stunned for a few seconds and asked, "What are the things I gave you?" "Lucky bag." Taoist Chen smiled and said, "A broken lucky bag, no need to return it." As soon as Taoist Chen finished speaking, my grandma changed her face. Taoist Chen smiled and stared at us. The look in his eyes became more and more weird. My grandma whispered, "We can't leave." Taoist Chen's laughter kept echoing in my ears. The end.
This is a scary and sad story, which I heard from the elders in the village. In the 1990s, there was a young wife named Lu He in the neighboring village. Her parents were from another place, and she gave birth to a daughter not long after she got married. The man in the family went to work in other places, and could earn a lot of money every year. Lu He raised her daughter alone. Although it was hard, she was lucky that she didn't have to worry about food and drink at home. During the New Year and other festivals, she could still buy a few feet of cloth to make new clothes and a flowery skirt for her daughter, so she lived a happy life. However, there are unexpected events. When Lu He's daughter was 5 years old, she was unlucky and suffered an evil disaster, almost losing her life. This story started with a well near her home. The well was under an old locust tree and was an abandoned well. It had been abandoned for a long time, with a huge stone pressing on the well and weeds growing all around it, which looked gloomy. People walking by the well often felt chilly, not only shivering, but also making the well look more gloomy and scary. What surprised Lu He was that the villagers seemed to be very taboo about this well. In the midsummer, the villagers liked to gather under the big tree to enjoy the cool and gossip. The old locust tree next to the well was lush and leafy, and there was a cool breeze underneath, which was the best place to enjoy the cool and escape the heat, but no villagers had ever been there to enjoy the cool. Sometimes the children in the village played near the well, and the adults always had gloomy faces when they saw them, and hurriedly called the children aside and scolded them in a low voice. It seemed that there was something terrible in the well that could eat people. Louhi also asked her husband what was going on with the well and why it was sealed by stones. But her husband was hesitant and vague, and he refused to tell Louhi no matter what. He only said that the well was evil and asked her never to go there alone in the future. This made Louhi even more curious about the well, but she was a little scared in her heart. I suspect that there is something harmful hidden in the well. Louhi usually won't go near the well, and sometimes she will avoid it if she has to pass by. But there is a small river near the well, and the villagers will go to the river to wash clothes. Standing by the river, you can see the well when you look back. Every time she washes clothes, Louhi always feels that someone is staring at her from the direction of the well behind her, but she can't see anything when she looks back. One foggy day, when Louhi was washing clothes by the river, that strange feeling came again. She couldn't help but look back at the well, and through the thick fog, she vaguely saw a person standing at the edge of the well. Very short, it seems to be a child. It is looming in the fog, and the face is blurred, and the appearance is unclear. It looks like a little girl with 2 pigtails on her head. Louhi was surprised. In such a foggy day, whose child is playing here by himself? So he said, "Why are you here alone, kid? Where are your parents?" Louhi suppressed her fear and shouted at the child. The child didn't react, still standing quietly by the well, as if staring at her. Louhi was a little panicked, her heart was beating hard. How could a normal child not say anything? Louhi thought, could it be that she had a flower in her eyes? She swallowed her saliva, plucked up her courage and slowly walked towards the child, wanting to confirm. When she came to the well through the thick fog in front of her was blown away by a gust of wind, and there was nothing behind the fog. Louhi breathed a sigh of relief and laughed at herself for being suspicious. Just as she turned around and was about to leave, she suddenly heard a voice, hee hee, hee hee. It was a child's laughter. The voice was childish and innocent. However, this childish laughter seemed extremely terrifying in this foggy and gloomy place. And this laughter seemed to come from the well blocked by a huge rock. Louhi was immediately frightened and ran away, not even having time to take the clothes by the river. She ran home in one breath and still felt scared. After that, she became even more afraid of the well, and even had to go to the river to wash clothes with others. On the day her daughter got into trouble, Louhi went to the river to wash clothes again. Before, she went with a young wife from a neighbor's house, and her daughter was left to the neighbor to help take care of for a while. But that day, the neighbor's family went out of town to visit relatives, so Louhi had to take her daughter to wash clothes by herself. But she didn't expect that after washing the clothes, she looked back and found that her daughter was gone. Where could a child who just turned 5 run to? She hurriedly searched for her in a hurry. When she found the well, she was stunned and suddenly had a bad feeling. The stone on the well was lifted by someone. The stone was big and heavy, weighing hundreds of pounds. I'm afraid no one in the village could lift it. Who did it? Without time to think about it, Louhi hurried to the well and looked into it, and her heart was immediately gripped. Her daughter really fell into the well, but fortunately she didn't sink yet, and was struggling in the well water. She told her daughter not to be afraid, hold the rope tightly, and then she went to call for help nearby. Unexpectedly, when the villagers who were familiar with her heard that her daughter fell into the well under the locust tree, they suddenly changed their faces and refused to help. Louhi was anxious and worried, not knowing what was wrong with the villagers. When she was anxious, she fortunately met a neighbor's family coming back from visiting relatives. The male owner of the neighbor's house was called Juzi. He and his man grew up naked and called brothers and sisters. They had a good relationship. Hearing that her daughter had fallen into the well, she went down the well without saying anything and fished her daughter out. After the little girl was fished out, she didn't cry or make a fuss. She stood aside and played with the flower headband on her head. Seeing that her daughter was fine, Louhi felt relieved. After thanking Juzi, she took her daughter home. But what Louhi didn't expect was that her daughter was a little abnormal after a few days. She was no longer as smart as before, but lifeless all day long. She liked to stay still by herself, and sometimes she didn't respond when she was called. She also liked to stare at people with her eyes straight, and muttered something that others couldn't understand from time to time. Her behavior was very abnormal, and she was completely different from before. Luhi thought that her daughter might have been scared by falling into the well, so she called her soul several times. It was useless, so she took her to see a doctor, who prescribed a bunch of medicine. After taking it, her condition not only did not improve, but became more and more serious. Sometimes she would sit up in the middle of the night and stare at Luhi with her head tilted. Luhi was frightened several times, and her daughter's condition did not improve. Luhi was worried every day. Not long after, the neighbors knew about this. The neighbor's mother-in-law told her privately that the well the child fell into was evil, and the child might have a weak disease. If she really couldn't do it, she could go 30 miles south of the village, to a village called Erdayapo, to find a person named Wangu. Wangu was a fortune teller, or what is commonly known as a fortune teller. It is said that she was very effective in fortune telling. Luhi had no other good ideas, so she took her daughter to find Wangu. Wangu's house was not big. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary villager's house. There was dried corn hanging outside the door. After entering the door, there was an incense burner in the middle of the yard, with a thick layer of incense ash inside. In the main room, there was smoke curling up. Wangu was burning incense and worshipping the gods. Wangu was in her 50s or 60s. She looked like an ordinary rural woman, nothing unusual. Seeing someone coming to her house, she politely poured a cup of hot water and handed it to Luhi. She asked her to sit down and rest her feet, and she would talk slowly if there was anything. Luhi told Aunt Wang about the child while drinking water. Aunt Wang looked at the child, opened her eyes again, and saw a red line in each of the child's eyes. Her expression gradually became solemn. Luhi saw that Aunt Wang looked bad, and her heart suddenly skipped a beat, and she asked hurriedly, "What's wrong with the child?" Aunt Wang said, "This child has red pupils and red lines in his eyes. It seems that he was indeed hit by some dirty things, and suffered from a weak disease." But Aunt Wang paused, and then continued, "It doesn't matter, I have seen a lot of such things. As long as you do what I say, the child will be fine." Aunt Wang told Luhi, "Go home quickly, find a big rooster that has been raised for more than 5 years, and pierce the cock's comb with a needle. Take out a few drops of chicken blood and drip them on the girl's shoulders and forehead respectively. Then put the big rooster in the house when you go to bed at night." Aunt Wang said, "This person has 3 young fires on his body, one on his shoulders and the other on his forehead. They can remove and suppress evil spirits, so that some dirty things cannot get close. But people with weak bodies, or the elderly, children, women and children, who have insufficient yang and weak yang fire, are easily targeted by some evil spirits and pounce on them, causing them to become weak and sick. Chickens are poultry that pursues yang, and they are the best at suppressing evil spirits, so there is a saying that the crowing of a chicken can break the blood on the cock's comb is the purest and most yang thing, full of yang energy. Dripping chicken blood on a person's shoulders and forehead is like adding oil to an oil lamp, which can make the yang fire burn more vigorously. The dirty thing was burned by the 3 yang fires in the girl's body for a night, and if it didn't die, it would be seriously injured. The next morning, if the chicken called again out of the blue, no matter how powerful the evil spirit was, it would scare her to death and scatter her soul. After listening to Aunt Wang's words, Luhi felt a little relieved. In the countryside of that era, every family raised a few chickens, and a 5-year-old rooster was not uncommon. Luhi found one and took out the chicken blood according to what Aunt Wang said. But when dripping it on her daughter, something went wrong. The chicken blood turned into gas with a cheese sound as soon as it dripped on. Just like water dripping on a red-hot stove cover, it evaporated in an instant, leaving no trace, and it was like this for many times in a row. After taking the chicken blood 3 or 4 times, the big rooster ran around in pain, no longer as majestic as it was when it first came. He didn't know if this was normal. She dripped it on her daughter's shoulders and forehead a few more times, and felt that it was almost done, so she coaxed her daughter to sleep. But she herself almost didn't sleep all night, just hoping that dawn would come early and her daughter would get better quickly. It was almost 5 o'clock in the morning before she couldn't help but fall asleep. When she woke up, it was already noon. She hurriedly looked at her daughter, wanting to see how she was, but she saw her daughter squatting on the ground, not knowing what she was doing. She stood up and came to her daughter's side. The scene in front of her made her shudder, and she almost ran away. The daughter was holding the big rooster in her hand, and the neck of the big rooster had been twisted off. The head was drooping, and the chicken blood kept dripping down and flowing all over the ground. The daughter just held the chicken and stared at Luhi. She giggled in her mouth, and Luhi's scalp was numb. Luhi was scared and anxious. Seeing her daughter become like this, her life was in danger, and she didn't care about being afraid for a while. She reached out and took the dead chicken from her daughter's hand and threw it away, and took her daughter to find Aunt Wang again. When she told Aunt Wang about the situation, Aunt Wang's face suddenly changed and said, "This thing on my daughter is not afraid of even chickens, it's not simple. It seems that the usual method is not going to work, and I can only find a godfather for my daughter." Aunt Wang said that the reason why the girl was entangled by dirty things was not only because she was weak, but also because she had no ancestral protection. For people from large families or children of noble families, the most important thing during festivals is to worship their ancestors. Why do the more noble children care about worshiping their ancestors? Because they know that when the family encounters disasters, their ancestors will sit in to protect their descendants from disasters. That is why many famous families have been prosperous for many years, but ordinary families often don't care about these. They don't offer tablets to their ancestors, don't worship their ancestors, and cut off contact with their ancestors, so they can't receive the ancestral protection and get the blessing of their ancestors. When encountering some disasters, naturally there will be no ancestors to help. And this ancestral protection is also the blessing accumulated by the ancestors over the years. Some families have ancestors who do good deeds and accumulate virtues, and this blessing will gather descendants, blessing their descendants to have a prosperous fortune, no disasters, and no evil. Let the child find a blessed person as a godfather, that is, find a backer for the child, borrow the blessing of others to help the child turn misfortune into good fortune, and let the ancestors of others protect the child. But Aunt Wang frowned and said, "In your daughter's situation, it is probably useless to find an ordinary person as a godfather, so you can only try him." Luhi hurriedly asked, "Who is he?" Aunt Wang did not say it clearly, but gave Luhi a bowl of white rice and a pair of chopsticks, and asked for the child's birth date and 8 characters to be engraved on a longevity lock, and asked Luhi to take these things out of the village. Walk along a dirt road to the west for more than 20 miles. At this time it was almost dark, and you would see a remote village. Not far after entering the village, you will see a peeled locust tree, and behind the locust tree is the man's home. You stick the chopsticks on the rice and put them at the door of his house together with the longevity lock, and he will know what it means. If he is willing to accept the rice, then the matter will be settled. He will naturally lock the longevity lock for you. The longevity lock must be locked by the godfather himself, which can avoid disasters and prolong life, and turn misfortune into good fortune. When the time comes, you can give the longevity lock to your daughter, and her life will be locked. And with him as your daughter's godfather, your daughter will be saved. After a pause, Wangu continued, "But this godfather cannot be accepted in vain. During the holidays, don't forget to take your daughter to see him and burn a few incense sticks for him." Luhi was a little confused when she heard this. Ghosts have to burn incense, so why do living people have to burn incense? But she didn't think about it carefully, and took her daughter and took the things and set off. I don't know how long I walked, until it got dark. Luhi finally saw a desolate little village in front of her, which should be the village that Wangu said. After entering the village, Luhi found something wrong. This village is very strange, with fallen leaves underfoot and the road surface covered. There are half-human high weeds on both sides of the road, and no one takes care of it, giving people a desolate and dilapidated feeling. Is there no one in this village? Luhi felt a little strange and continued to move forward. There are many peeled dead trees and dilapidated houses around, and those houses seem to have been uninhabited for a long time. But there are candles in every house, but no one can be seen. The flames of the candles are reflected on the window paper, flickering and swaying, shaking Lu He's heart and feeling uneasy. Such a big village, but there was no sound. No human voices, no dog barking, the silence was terrifying. Strange, where are the people in this village? Lu He muttered, and walked forward carefully. After a while, he saw a big locust tree, and the bark was also peeled off. There were several mud brick houses behind the locust tree, one of which had a candle lit and the door was closed. It seemed that this family should be. Lu He went forward and knocked on the door, and then, as Wang Gu said, he stuck the chopsticks into the rice and put it at the door with the longevity lock. Not long after, he heard the cough of the old man in the house. Lu He saw two figures reflected on the window paper, both hugging each other, and they seemed to be an old couple. An old man and an old woman. The old man stretched out his hand from the crack of the door and took the rice and the longevity lock into the house. He kept sniffing the rice, looking very hungry. The old lady seemed unhappy, scolding him for being greedy, asking him not to eat and return the rice to avoid trouble. The old lady's voice was very strange, with a sharp tone and a vague sound, which made people feel uncomfortable. The old man ignored the old lady's words and continued to smell the rice. He burped while smelling it, as if he was full. He put down the bowl and threw the longevity lock out from the crack of the door. Lu He picked it up and saw that the longevity lock was already locked. She knew that the matter was settled, so she hung the longevity lock around her daughter's neck. Just as she was about to leave, a voice suddenly came from the room. It was the voice of the old man. The old man said, "Since we have become godparents, don't leave tonight. This village is not peaceful. There are many weasels and wild dogs at night. You should stay here for one night." It was late at night, and Lu He was afraid that there would be danger if he walked on the night road. Although she thought the old couple was also very strange, and even the whole village was weird, after all, it was Aunt Wang who asked her to come, and she thought the old couple were not bad people, so she agreed. When she pushed the door open and went in, the old couple disappeared, and no one responded after calling a few times. Lu He guessed that the old couple probably went out through the back door, and felt that they were really weird people, letting her stay, but she left. But she didn't think much about it. Seeing that there was a Kong in the room, she slept on the Kong with her daughter. She slept in a daze at night, and vaguely heard the sound of ping ping pong. It was like someone was fighting, and the sound was noisy. It seemed that there were quite a few people, and they kept tossing for most of the night, and the sound gradually disappeared. Lu He thought it was the sound of the wind outside and didn't care. Lu He woke up and felt a little cold. The wind was a little strong, blowing her chilly. She opened her eyes and looked, and was immediately stunned. She was not in the house, but sleeping in the wilderness. There were no houses around, and all she could see were graves. She and her daughter slept next to a grave that had been dug up somehow. The two coffins inside were also destroyed, and the bones were scattered outside, which was really scary. Lu He was so scared that her scalp went numb, and she pulled her daughter and ran away. Her daughter giggled as she ran, and the weird look on her face made Lu He shudder. Lu He found that the longevity lock on her daughter's neck had broken, and she was even more terrified. Lu He found Aunt Wang again and wanted to tell her what happened. Aunt Wang was burning incense and kowtowing to the statue. She stood up after a long time. She looked unhappy and frowned. Lu He was about to speak, but Aunt Wang waved her hand and said that she already knew about the matter. Aunt Wang said that old Yang had told her everything in her dream. Old Yang was the old man Lu He saw yesterday. Aunt Wang said that he was not a human but a ghost. Lu He had long thought that the old couple was strange, but now she was still surprised to hear Aunt Wang say it, and asked Aunt Wang what was going on. Aunt Wang told Lu He that she asked her daughter to recognize that this marriage was a yin marriage, that is, to find a dead person to be her daughter's godfather. Because the things in the world of the living can no longer suppress the evil spirits in her daughter, she had to find a person in the underworld to suppress it. She was worried that Lu He would be afraid to go, so she didn't tell her in advance, but she didn't expect that she couldn't suppress it in the end, and even old Yang fell. At this point, Aunt Wang showed a trace of fear on her face. She said that old Yang was the patriarch of the ghost village. He had great prestige in the village, whether he was alive or dead. He could call all the ghosts in the village. Unexpectedly, he still couldn't beat him, and his grave was dug up and his body was thrown away. When Louis heard that it was a ghost village, he understood why the village was so weird. He broke out in a cold sweat and was terrified. Aunt Wang told Louis, although it is a ghost village, there is no need to be afraid. Because the people in that village are all good people, not evil ghosts. Aunt Wang said that the village was also a quiet and peaceful small village in the early years. The villagers were hardworking and kind, and everyone was very good. But then a great famine occurred. The famine was so severe that it swept all over the country. The neighboring counties were also like clay Buddhas crossing the river, unable to protect themselves. The villagers had nowhere to escape from the famine, and most of the people in that village were old, weak, sick and disabled, so they couldn't make it. After the bark was eaten up, the whole village starved to death. But they were unwilling to give up. They had finally driven away the devils and survived the civil war. They thought they could finally live a good life, but they were hit by this once-in-a-century famine. The death was too unjust. They were resentful and hateful in their hearts, and the whole village was full of resentment. Perhaps because of the great resentment, the dead in the village did not enter reincarnation and still lived in the village. That village became a ghost village. Although the people in that village had resentment and became ghosts, they never harmed anyone. On the contrary, they sometimes helped people. Aunt Wang said that she was familiar with Lao Yang too in that village. Sometimes when she encountered problems that could not be solved when she was reading things for people, she would often trouble him. Lao Yang too also starved to death and was greedy, so I often offered him a bowl of white rice. Once Lao Yang too was happy, he agreed to the matter, and this time was the same. I wanted Lao Yang too to help the child, but I didn't expect that the evil spirit in the child was so powerful that Lao Yang too was hurt. Aunt Wang said that she took a breath of cold air when she learned that even old Yang couldn't suppress the evil spirit. This kind of thing has never happened before, and I don't know where the evil spirit on the child comes from, and it's so fierce. When Louis heard this, her heart sank. She begged Aunt Wang to save the child. If the child had any accident, she would not be able to live. Aunt Wang thought for a while, quietly pulled her aside and told her, the dirty thing on the girl's body is probably from a big source. No matter what is on the ground or underground, it can't suppress her. It seems that only the Heavenly One can do it. Louis didn't understand it very well, and asked Aunt Wang what to do. Aunt Wang said that she had to find a bodhisattva to suppress her. She had to use a bodhisattva portrait that had been worshipped for more than 10 years and was blessed. However, it was not easy to find a bodhisattva portrait that had been worshipped for more than 10 years. Whether it could be found depended on the child's luck. After finding the bodhisattva portrait, hang it in the room where the child slept. In less than 2 days, the dirt on the child will be suppressed and the child will recover. He felt relieved when he heard this. This matter is not difficult to handle. Coincidentally, the grandmother of her neighbor is a Buddhist who has been vegetarian and chanting for many years. There is also a picture of Bodhisattva at home. She told this to Aunt Wang, and Aunt Wang was also very happy, saying, "It seems that this girl is lucky and her life is not over." Without further delay, she asked her to go home and borrow the picture of Bodhisattva. When Louis led the child away, Aunt Wang sent them out. The child suddenly turned around and said to Aunt Wang coldly, "You are going to die." Aunt Wang was stunned when she heard this. The Buddhist beads she had been holding in her hand for many years suddenly broke, and the beads fell to the ground. Louis was also panicked when she looked at her strange daughter. After helping Aunt Wang pick up the Buddhist beads, she quickly took her daughter away. After returning home, she quickly went to her neighbor's mother-in-law to borrow the Bodhisattva portrait and hung it in the inner room where she slept. She also offered incense and knelt down to worship the Bodhisattva, praying that she could exorcise evil spirits and bless her daughter to recover quickly. At night, Louis and her daughter slept in the same bed. She didn't know what time it was at night. She was half asleep and suddenly smelled a strange smell, as if something was burning. She hurriedly opened her eyes and saw the scene in front of her, which made her hair stand on end. The Bodhisattva portrait hanging on the wall was actually burning. In the firelight, the Bodhisattva sitting on the lotus platform had tears in his eyes and a sad face, which was indescribably weird. And the daughter was standing by the bed, looking at the Bodhisattva portrait on the wall that had been burned beyond recognition, giggling. She was still whispering something in her mouth. Late at night, when everything was quiet, the daughter's voice could be heard vaguely, as if she was reciting a nursery rhyme. When the rats are born, the 9 states will be in great trouble, with piles of dead bones all over the ground, and stones all over the well. Only ghosts can be heard crying at the graves, but no gods can show mercy. The daughter's tender voice made people feel an indescribable chill. Luhi was shocked and scared. She didn't expect that the ghost thing on her daughter's body would not even be afraid of the Bodhisattva. Who could suppress it? She was anxious and locked her daughter in the house. She went to find Wangu herself to ask if there was any way. When she arrived at Wangu's house, it was already dawn. There were many people standing in front of Wangu's house, as if something had happened. Luhi went up to ask, and the words of a bystander shocked Luhi. Wangu is dead. In the morning, she was found hanged on the beam, and Wangu's death was very strange. There was no tool to stand on her feet. It was as if she was dragged to the beam and hanged. She knew that this was the evil spirit's revenge on Aunt Wang for meddling in other people's business. Not only did she fail to save her daughter, but she also harmed Aunt Wang. She felt guilty and worried about her daughter's safety. She was confused for a while and ran out stumbling. She walked back crying and not looking at the road. As she walked, she suddenly bumped into someone. She looked up and saw that it was an old Taoist priest. She also knew this Taoist priest. He was a Taoist priest in a small temple on a nearby barren mountain. He often went down the mountain to perform rituals for people. In the past, there were several funerals in the village, and this Taoist priest was invited. Luhi thought, aren't Taoist priests supposed to exorcise demons and eliminate disasters for people? Luhi grabbed him, knelt down and kowed out to him several times, asking the old Taoist priest to help her. The old Taoist priest was very easygoing. He pulled her up and asked what happened. Luhi told her the whole story of her daughter being possessed by the evil spirit. When the old Taoist heard that even the Bodhisattva couldn't suppress the evil spirit, he took a breath of cold air and said that this evil spirit was so fierce that it seemed to be really extraordinary, and he wanted to go and see it himself. Luhi took the old Taoist back home. When he opened the door, the Taoist's face suddenly changed when he saw Luhi's daughter. Pulling Luhi aside, he told Luhi that it was no wonder that even the Bodhisattva couldn't suppress it. The one on his daughter's body was not an ordinary evil spirit, but a ghost. As the saying goes, there are thousands of ghosts walking at night, and the ghost is the first. This evil can be said to be the king of ghosts, with resentment and fierceness. Moreover, this ghost is transformed after the death of a person with resentment, and often died unjustly, with cause and effect. Even the Bodhisattva dare not get involved easily, so he couldn't suppress her. But this ghost is fierce, but it is not completely impossible to subdue it. As long as you find out where her resentment is, resolve her resentment, and eliminate her obsession, the ghost will naturally dissipate. The most urgent thing is to know the origin of this evil spirit first, so as to prescribe the right medicine. Luhi didn't know the origin of this evil spirit, but she knew it must be related to the well. So she took the old Taoist priest to the neighbor's grandmother's house. After she told the purpose of the visit, the neighbor's grandmother also knew that this matter was a matter of life and death, so she sighed and did not hide anything. She told the whole story of the well. The story starts with the Great Famine in the year of the rat. At that time, the drought was severe, no rain fell from the sky, and the river area dried up. Not only did the crops in the fields die of drought, but even people had no water to drink. The well under the big locust tree was dug very deep. There was water at first, but gradually the water in the well became less and less, and the water level became lower and lower. The water that was drawn up was all yellow mud soup, which was not drinkable at all. This well was the last source of water in the village. Once the well dried up, the whole village would die of thirst. At that time, the villagers were ignorant and didn't know who spread the rumor. It was said that the reason why the well was going to dry up was because the Well Dragon King had brought disaster. In order to appease the anger of the Well Dragon King, sacrifices had to be made, and boys and girls had to be thrown into the well. At first, the villagers didn't believe it. Whoever's child was distressed, who would be willing to throw it into the well? But later, the water in the well became less and less, and even the yellow mud soup could not be pumped out. The villagers thought that if this continued, they would die sooner or later, so they might as well give it a try. So they persuaded a widow in the village to offer her 5 or 6-year-old daughter to the Dragon King of the well. As compensation, the villagers gathered a bucket of rice for her. The widow had 2 children to raise, a boy and a girl. At that time, every household had no food to eat, and the widow's husband died early. The family was already poor and had no rice to cook. The family ate tree bark and bran every day. The 2 children were pale and thin, and they could not walk steadily. But a bucket of rice could last for more than 10 days, so the widow was tempted. After all, if they endured it any longer, the 2 children would not survive. It would be better to take the life of the little daughter to save the son and leave a descendant for her deceased husband. The widow lied to the little daughter that she would take her to buy a flower headband, and took her to the well. The widow was also upset. When she came, she cried bitterly and stopped all the way. It took more than an hour to walk a few minutes. When she arrived at the well, the widow couldn't do it. Then he asked his daughter to wait by the well, saying he was going to buy her a flower headband. He ran away and cried loudly before coming back, and pushed his daughter into the well when she was not paying attention. Strangely enough, water gushed out of the well not long after that. The villagers were very happy, thinking that the village was saved. But the good times did not last long, and the water in the well dried up again after a few days. At this time, someone said that it was because there were not enough people to offer sacrifices, and they had to continue offering sacrifices. The villagers were ignorant and believed the rumors. Although they were reluctant, they had to throw their children into the well one by one in order to survive. But all the children thrown into the well were girls, not a single boy. In just a few days, there was no girl in the village. However, the water in the well never rose again, and the villagers realized that they had been deceived by the rumors and regretted it. Fortunately, it rained not long after, alleviating the drought, and the villagers were saved. Later, the famine passed and the village gradually returned to normal. But the well became a taboo for the whole village, and no one wanted to mention it. And people often saw a girl with 2 pigtails standing by the well. She looked up, as if waiting for someone. Some people said that the girl looked like the widow's little daughter, waiting for her mother to buy her a flower headband. So many girls had died in the well, and now this kind of thing happened, making the villagers panic. Not long after, the well was pressed up by the villagers with big stones. The area near the well also became a dangerous place in the village, and no one dared to set foot easily. The villagers would rather take a detour than pass by the well. After listening, the old Taoist sighed and said, "The widow's little daughter was pushed into the well by her own mother, and she was originally full of resentment. In addition, so many girls died in the well later, and the resentment in the well was so strong that it became a place to raise evil spirits, and she was raised into a ghost. Once this resentful soul becomes an evil spirit and is eroded by resentment, it loses its original mind. It became a bloodthirsty evil spirit that only knew how to eat people and hurt people. But although this girl became an evil spirit, she still had obsessions in her heart. She remembered what happened at the end of her life and kept a trace of consciousness. She waited for her mother to come back by the well. It was rare. The Taoist looked at Lu He and said, "But this wait has lasted for many years. Maybe she wanted to come out of the well, because she couldn't wait for her mother, or maybe she saw you with her daughter and was moved by the scene. She thought you looked like her mother and possessed the child, but I think she should have no ill intentions. Otherwise, with the ability of this evil spirit, how could you survive until now?" Lu He was thinking about her daughter's safety, so she asked the Taoist what to do. The old Taoist said, "Now that we know the origin of this evil spirit and understand her resentment, it will be easy. Just find her mother and let her take her away with the flower headband. Her resentment is gone, and her obsession is gone, so it will naturally dissipate. At this time, the neighbor's mother-in-law said, "You want to go to the widow for help, but this is really not easy to do." During the Great Famine that year, although she exchanged her daughter's life for a scoop of rice, she could only eat for a few days. Before the Great Famine was over, her son starved to death. Although she survived, she became crazy because of her son's death. Later, she was taken away by a relative in the neighboring village to take care of her, and she should still be alive now. The old Taoist thought for a while and said, "As long as she is still alive, I have a way." Then he asked the neighbor's mother-in-law for the address of the widow's relative's house, and rushed there with Lu He. After finding the widow, Lu He saw that she was indeed crazy. Her hair had turned gray and her face was full of misery. She held a worn-out pillow in her arms, shaking it lightly, pretending to coax a child to sleep, and whispering something. Her relatives said that she had gone crazy since her son died. Now she holds the pillow as her son all day, coaxing her son to sleep, feeding her son, and even refusing to let go when she sleeps. She said that she wanted her son to grow up white and fat, and that she would marry her son and give birth to a big fat boy in the future. Lu He suddenly felt a little sad and her eyes were wet. She was not moved by the widow's love for her son, but because she clearly had a daughter who died. After obtaining the consent of the widow's relatives, the old Taoist priest took a few drops of blood from the widow's finger, and after returning, he made a paper man and dripped the blood on the paper man. The Taoist priest said, "This paper man is stained with the widow's blood, so it can deceive ghosts." Then he asked Lu He to buy a lot of colorful flower headbands and put them on the hands of the paper man. At noon, the old Taoist priest asked Lu He to tie her daughter to a big tree with hemp rope. He made a gesture and muttered something. The paper man stood up like a puppet being manipulated, and slowly walked towards Lu He's daughter. When Lu He's daughter saw the paper man, her eyes widened. She stared at the paper man blankly, her eyes full of grievance. She opened her mouth, as if she wanted to call her mother. However, her voice was so weak that she never said these two words. She struggled to pounce on the paper man, but was always bound by ropes. Suddenly, a vague figure jumped out of Lu He's daughter's body. The figure was shrouded in a layer of smoke, hazy. It was not clear, but it was vaguely seen that she had two pigtails and staggered towards the paper man. She took the flower headband from the paper man with one hand and held the paper man's hand tightly with the other hand. The paper man took her to the sunlight, and when she first touched the sunlight, she suddenly burst into smoke all over her body, making a sizzling sound. She was just startled, but did not let go of the paper man's hand, letting the paper man lead her forward in the sunlight. The smoke covering her body was gradually pierced by the sunlight, and her face slowly became clear. It was a very cute little girl, with a happy smile on her tender face, jumping forward. However, Lu He noticed that under that bright smile, tears flowed from the corners of the little girl's eyes. Her shoulders shrugged as she walked. Under the sunlight, her figure gradually became fainter and fainter, and she looked very uncomfortable, but she never let go of the paper man's hand, but held it tighter and tighter. Until the paper man's hand was grabbed into pieces of paper, until she disappeared and dissipated with the wind. The Taoist said, she was abandoned for so many years, waited for so many years, and looked forward to so many years, but she could not wait for her mother. Let her mother take her back, how could she let go? She had already got what she wanted and no longer had any resentment when she could wait for her mother to come. Once exposed to the sun, her soul will naturally fly away. The Taoist sighed, as if he couldn't bear it, and shook his head and left. Lu He's heart was also full of mixed feelings. Although the ghost was evil, it was just a child after all. All she wanted was to wait for her mother to take her back from the dark well. In the end, she ended up with a soul flying away, which was also pitiful. She looked at the flower hairbands scattered on the ground and couldn't help but sigh. She turned around and untied the rope for her daughter. The daughter seemed to have just woken up and called for her mother. Lu He picked her up and walked home, holding her very tightly all the way. The end.